Welcome to the special.
Did you try? I think I've muted those. When you talk through the microphone for me, try.
Hey, this was nice.
So far.
Okay, all right, take two. Welcome to the Larkspur Planning Commission meeting of August 20. It's a special meeting tonight. Can we please have a roll call? Commissioner Miller. Present. Commissioner Swisher.
Present.
Commissioner Campbell.
Present.
Commissioner Wagner.
Present.
And Commissioner Ho is recused tonight for financial conflict of interest.
You have a quorum. Thank you. So we're going straight into the public hearing this evening, and we're actually going to divide it up into two different sections, which is slightly different from what we see in the agenda. The first part, we're going to talk about the final environmental impact report for the general plan and the associated statement of overriding considerations. Then we're going to discuss the housing element. So there's two parts of the meeting. So, and I also want to just make a few remarks of my own, which is really to thank everybody here for coming tonight. This is a really, really important topic for our city, and it's really important that people come out and speak and make their opinions heard. So it's a beautiful evening out there. I'm sure there are other things we want to be doing. So I really appreciate everyone coming. And I also want to say that we are here for the same reason. All of us on the panel tonight are volunteers. We all have jobs, we all have families. I have a kindergartner starting school tomorrow, so I'm incredibly nervous for her for tomorrow morning. So we also have other places we could be, but we really, really care about the city that we live in, and we want the right thing to happen to it. We want to protect it as best we can. I guess everyone knows that we have these state laws that are imposed upon us, and we're doing our best to try and stick with the law and protect our city. So I just want to start with that. Okay, can we please have a staff report relating to the environmental impact report and okay. So
Which was like, the first report is going to be brief on the general plan update. The planning commission considered the general plan and the environmental impact report in January of 2023. And then the consultant went to finalize the environmental impact report. So you now have a final environmental impact report as well as the draft environmental impact report. The general plan is the constitution for the city, essentially, and it establishes goals and policies and programs related to the city's community development or physical development. And it has a lot of goals as well as policies to implement the goals and a number of programs to carry out the goals. The general plan is fairly similar to the 1990 general plan that's in effect today. There's one addition of a mixed use zoning designation, and that covers the Ross Valley Sanitary District site at the Larkspur landing area. And that mixed use designation allows for, like what it says, mixed uses. So the intent is to allow residential and commercial uses on that site. There's some programs that give more flexibility for changing commercial uses and less traffic review. And the intent of that is that the current general plan has some very strict policies with the intent of essentially not seeing a single car trip on Sir Francis Drake, which I'm sure everyone loves to see, but the difficulty with that is it precludes any new businesses from coming into town or any businesses that might be more successful than any other business. So it's been challenging for staff to fill vacancies or and challenging for businesses who want to come into town because of the policies that are in the current general plan. So some of those policies are relaxed. Reviews are still required, but the threshold would be reduced so that it'd be a little easier for new business to come in. There's a new neighborhood commercial designation for the North Magnolia area to encourage more resident serving uses and mixed residential use in the commercial areas. Currently, there's two different commercial districts, one on the north side of Magnolia, and one on the south side of Magnolia. And then there's programs to implement open space and parkland zoning districts. And there's additional open space areas designated and also not waterfront. Doesn't have in front of me here. It's a shoreline designation. So there's more open space areas that are preserved on the general plan. And then one of the sections that was revised fairly recently is the safety element, because the safety element is required to be updated when the housing element is updated. So that plan was revised since the original 2040 general plan was updated. And that's included in the document that you have tonight to consider. There are some changes to the house or land use map that staff is recommending that we recommend to the city council. And I can go over them, others can already see the map, but there is a area near the Ross Valley Sanitary site and existing Tub Lake part that's owned by the city. And so we're recommending that area. It's above the affordable housing development that's there, so it's not accessible by roads. But that be designated also as open space, just like the adjacent Tub Lake Park. And then the Ross Valley Sanitary District site, we're recommending that the open space part, so it's a private open space area on that site, that the boundaries be adjusted slightly to reflect where the activity.
The cursor is really small, but it's up there. I'm gonna see. Yeah.
Here. So we're recommending a boundary change to the private open space on the Ross Valley Sanitary District site. It's not really even noticeable on the map of a small scale, but it would just encompass the actual natural habitat areas of the site and exclude areas that are not as natural. I think so.
I'm trying to find it myself.
Okay, and then
It's way to the right.
so it's a tiny green spot. So then one other change we're recommending to the land use map is to exclude a strip of the bike path that's by Heather Gardens, correct? And that's so that it would just remain the existing, land use designation. And at some future date, it could be redesignated as open space. And that's just because one of the council members lives in that area and we don't want them to be precluded from considering the whole plan. I don't know if that doesn't make sense, but it can explain that better. So if there's a council member that lives within 1,000 square feet of the site, if this plan was to go forward, the council consideration that they would refuse from considering the whole plan unless we break it out. And so we want all the council members to be able to consider the 2020 general plan. We're recommending addition of an open space site that. That's a site that is developed with single family home. And it's been included in the open space designation, so we're recommending that actually be just incorporated into the low density residential designation that's adjacent to that area. It's actually an open space site that's included in the low density residential area. We'd like that the open space to go over open space district. And then that last site there is a city-owned open space parcel that's going in the density residential district that we recommend be included in the open space as well. And then finally, at the top of the map, on the College of Marine site, just are recommending that the boundaries be adjusted so that the educational district boundaries don't encompass the creek and the adjacent shoreline. And then the shoreline designation boundary be adjusted so that it's just covering the shoreline on that site. So with those modifications are included in the draft revised resolution that's before you tonight. The final environmental impact report identified 5 significant and unavoidable impacts. Since that time, two of them relate to greenhouse gas emissions, which are the ones in the green. So one of the impacts is because site-specific greenhouse gas reductions and tools to document greenhouse gas reduction to a level that is 60% below 1990 level is not available. The project considered to have a significant and unavoidable impact with respect to greenhouse gas emissions. And at this time, there's no plan that extends beyond 2030 that achieves long-term greenhouse gas reduction goals established under Executive Order S-03-05. Therefore, project-related greenhouse gas emissions and their contribution to global climate change is considered to be cumulatively considerable, and greenhouse gas emission impacts would be significant and unavoidable. So when a lead agency finds that there are impacts that are significant and unavoidable, CEQA requires preparation of findings of fact in the statement of overriding considerations. And so we've prepared that finding of fact and statement of overriding consideration for you to consider and recommend. The city council would ultimately be adopting that document. And the city council is the deciding body on this final environmental impact report and the 2040 general plan. There are other 3 impacts of the environmental impact report, significant impacts the environmental impact report identified related to water. At the time that the environmental impact report was prepared, the water district had not considered the Bay Area's regional housing allocation for Marin County in their planning documents. But since that time, they have. So Marin Water prepared a urban water management plan that takes into account build out under the regional housing needs allocation. And it has determined that there's adequate water with full employment and housing build out under standard water use conditions, as well as under drought conditions that are projected in the plan. So those impacts are no longer viewed as significant and unavoidable, but are just, they're no longer significant impacts of the plan. So what staff is recommending tonight for the general plan and environmental impact report is that you adopt the draft resolution, which is 2024-001, as amended, which is in front of you tonight, to certify the environmental impact report and adopt the findings, recommending the city council certify the environmental impact report and adopt findings, the statement of overriding considerations and mitigation and monitoring program, and that is recommending that the city council adopt the 2040 general plan with the modifications that we recommended tonight. And that concludes my staff report, unless you have any questions for me.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions to start? I actually had a couple questions. In your staff report, you talked about the study that was carried out by Marine Water, and that it was the water supply is expected to be sufficient to support the district's projected water demand through 2045 during normal hydrologic years. But then later on, you talk about the available supplies meeting the projected demands in all hydrologic conditions. So it seems contradictory to me.
Yeah, it's contradictory, just the report has both conclusions that it meets the demands under standard water conditions as well as under drought conditions too.
So can we be confident that if we have to build the required marina housing unit, the 979 units, there will be sufficient water supply?
So
I guess, marine water.
according to the marine water plan, there would be adequate water supply. The other thing to consider is that not all of those units will be constructed. And likely, just as the last round of RENA, the housing units were not all actually constructed. So there is essentially a built-in buffer, just since not all of the sites that were planned for be built.
All right, thank you.
That's, hey,
Okay. So one of the reasons that there's adequate water is because reducing the water supply for irrigating landscaping. So there is adequate water for housing use and for human consumption. A lot of their measures involve conservation efforts in order to reduce the amount of drinking water that is used for watering plants. So there is water supply, the community is using it in a way that is supporting the vegetation.
So we're coming. So I mean, you know what, there will actually be opportunity to ask questions. This is a chance for the commission to ask questions to staff. One of the concerns I actually had was, will there be enough water if we're going to build all these units, right? Do we have the supply? So that's what I wanted to hear from staff, and I'm pleased to see that Marine Waters made an effort to look into this and do a study and tell us an answer. So that's why I'm asking these questions. I know all of you probably have questions too, so if you don't mind, you will have an opportunity to come up and ask. I'll make sure that you all will, so. My other question I had was, you had said in your report that there was, the greenhouse gases couldn't be mitigated. So I just wanted to understand that a little further, it's like, why can't we mitigate the greenhouse?
Can you comment on that at all? More than I can. Thank you. Guidance City Attorney.
Hi.
I would, sorry.
Good evening. So I think a few things might help set some context for this question. So one is that, the final environmental impact report, and draft that are before the commission tonight, are, prepared in compliance with and is a requirement of state law referred to as the California Environmental Quality Act, we all refer to as CEQA. CEQA required for any development project that's not exempt, including a general plan update, rezoning, and housing element, that the city attempt to identify potentially significant environmental impacts of what's being proposed, and to mitigate those to the extent feasible. Often what will result is that an impact that was initially identified as potentially significant will be reduced to a less than significant level as a result of the mitigation measures that are identified. But CEQA also acknowledges that not all impacts can be reduced to a less than significant level. And that there are frequently, policy reasons that, a city would want to approve a project even though a significant impact is identified that can't be reduced to a less than significant level and is therefore unavoidable. And so it provides a pathway for a city to, say, we have evaluated, these impacts and found them to be potentially significant. We have looked at the possibility of feasible mitigation measures and, we will implement measures to try to reduce them to the extent possible, but even after those mitigation measures have been implemented, we find that the impact will still be significant. But this project is important enough for other reasons, economic development, provision of housing, provision of services, delivery of public safety, that we are willing to override, impacts to move forward and improve the project anyway. So with that context, it's important to understand that with GHG emissions, that it's very common, for a general plan update or a new general plan to identify that GHG emissions are a significant impact. That, in fact, I represent multiple public agencies around the state. I honestly can't remember a general plan update that has not had that finding. I think everybody's concerned about this impact in part because the problem's so big, but it's also because the problem is so big that it's beyond the scope of a single city to address. And so over a 30-year timeline that a typical general plan will be in place, it's there, the level of activity is generating an amount of GHG that's simply beyond one city to solve. And that's why the state has stepped in with a number of measures to attempt to reduce the state as a whole GHG measures down to levels that will be consistent with what science says will be levels that will mitigate the impact of climate change. So with all that said, what this final environmental impact report and the statement of overriding considerations that Elise referred to would say is that the city that based on the facts that are summarized in the resolution and the analysis that's provided and the reasons why the city would move forward with a general plan update anyway, that there's a legal basis to move forward with approving the general plan update, the rezoning, the housing element, despite development over the course of the general plan's life having significant impacts in terms of the level of GHG emissions.
Very helpful, thank you. So it sounds like most other cities are having the same issue.
It's extremely common. I mean, it's mostly a function of the nature of a general plan as a whole. Because it contemplates all aspects of activity within the city over a multi-decade timeframe. The things that are happening are often beyond the scope of what the city actually has enough regulatory control over that it can actually attempt to limit the emissions. And even so, the emissions limiting options that are available to the city aren't sufficient to address impacts that are this large. And because the impacts of GHG emissions are cumulative, it's simply beyond the scope of one city to solve. So it's very common.
All right, understood, thank you. Any more questions?
I just, what is the perspective on what is the greatest contributor to the GHG emissions in this kind of in the plan? I mean, what do they, if you, I guess I'm asking, what is it that any individual city can do to maximally mitigate the GHG emissions as best as possible, and what do we anticipate those emissions are going to be largely from?
This city does have a climate action plan, and the vehicle emissions are the highest generator of greenhouse gas emissions in the community, as most of the communities in Marin County. And there's a number of actions in the climate action plan, and some of them have been incorporated into the housing element in general plan as well. For example, locating housing near transportation, bus lines, and ferry stations should help reduce the vehicle amount of travel. As well as locating housing in commercial areas where people could walk and have alternatives to driving, and also development of affordable housing so that
Any other questions? All right, so I think we can open it now to the audience. So if anyone has any questions or comments on the environmental impact report or the general plan, if you have comments or questions on the housing element, and when I say housing element, I mean those individual sites that have been identified for building on, that will come next. This is just purely on what was presented, so. If you would like to come, where do you want to go? Okay. Yeah, please come up to the podium and if you could limit your comments to 3 minutes. Anyone? Mr. Holmes?
I know Mr. Holmes knows this, but for those of you who haven't been to a meeting before, we do have this system set up as a timer. The green light indicates that you have, I think, 2.5 minutes left. When the yellow light starts flashing, you have 30 seconds left, and when the red light starts flashing, you're done.
Thank you. Are you controlling that?
Alex and I will
Okay.
take turn.
James Holmes, Larkspur, just a quick point to follow up on the point the chair mentioned about what I would characterize as a rather sanguine or rosy account of the Marin Muni Water District's preparedness for drought conditions. What I read here is not what I hear when I listen to a Marin Muni Water District meeting. What I hear from the Marin Muni Water District is they are an agency that is very stressed and straitened and very concerned about their ability to provide water, especially in drought conditions, that they do not have a 5-year drought plan, that is what they are trying to work toward with their various plans, and that achieving that will require tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars for reservoirs and other kinds of, and desal, other kinds of plans, so that I think at a minimum, this paragraph should be submitted to the Marin Muni Water District to see if they currently agree, based on all of their ongoing plans, that this is an accurate consideration or an accurate account of what their situation is, because I suspect that it may not be.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Do we want to? We address that, has that report come from Bryn Water? Have they seen the comments? I mean, I assume that's where it came from, but.
I mean, they're from their report, and we share our general plan and all the element with the water district. And I've corresponded with them, they're the ones that find out where in the report it makes those conclusions.
Okay, so it sounds like this information has come directly from Marin Water.
Whether, yeah, the report was prepared by them and adopted by them.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Very much. I guess we'll bring it back to commission for discussion. Would like to sell?
It should be pretty close. You know, we all know that there's a drought, there's gonna be a problem, and there has been in the past. Vegetation dies off, people's gardens don't look too good. Probably desal is somewhere down the line and it's really expensive, but I think what the water district is saying is that for the most part, if people conserve in a really bad drought year, it'll work. So that's kind of where we are.
Thank you.
This, the obvious question, I think is on everybody's mind when it comes to approving things or not approving, the limitations of not approving the plan. I think it's an open question, not where I'm necessarily meeting, but what if the council, what if the planning commission, and I guess this is addressed to the city attorney, what if we say, nope, we're not gonna accept this?
The ARL?
Yeah, the ER, yeah.
Well, if the planning commission did not recommend, certification of the EIR, approval of the general plan update, approval of the housing element, and, the rezoning, this is gonna be a little bit of a long explanation, but so everyone will just have to bear with me. So the city's, the main thing I'm gonna focus on is the housing element, because it's the thing that is, of greatest legal consequence, but I will say that, it is also an issue for the city that the general plan is, I don't know how many years out of date at this point. Yeah, it has not been updated for quite some time, and it is less of a focus in terms of litigation risk than it has been, was earlier in my career, but it used to be the case that having an outdated general plan did expose the city to the possibility of judicial intervention to, in essence, take over, planning approval for the city until the city council approved an updated general plan. But I'm gonna focus on the housing element, because I know it's, even though we're jumping ahead an item, I know it's the thing that's driving a lot of discussion, and it may help folks understand, some things about staff report about that item, but it does address the question of all. Right now, the city is required by state law to have a housing element that is certified to comply with certain requirements that are spelled out in state law. In the past, cities were able to what was referred to as self-certify, and that is still on the books. But the sufficiency of self-certification to satisfy the requirements of state law is now being contested legally. The State Department of Housing and Community Development has taken the position that a housing element must have their certification to avoid the consequences of not having a certified housing element. Which means that not only does the city ultimately need to approve the housing element, but others, including HCD, will take the position that HCD must sign off on that housing element in order for the city to avoid some of the consequences that are spelled out in state law. One of the significant consequences, and this is the one that has received the most press, so it's the one that I'll focus on, is what's referred to as the builder's remedy. This is a provision of the Housing Accountability Act, that among other things prohibits the city from denying a qualified housing project if the city does not have a certified housing element. It doesn't, and for a builder's remedy project, it doesn't matter whether the housing project meets local requirements as long as it meets the state's qualifications. So what that means is, to use examples that often come up, somebody could propose housing in a commercial district. Somebody could propose a level of density that's beyond what's in the zoning code. Somebody could propose lot coverage that exceeds what would otherwise be allowed in the municipal code. The idea being that if this project meets what's in state law, and the city cannot make a finding that it has a certified housing element, the city also cannot deny that housing. Builder's remedy is being litigated right now. There are a number of open legal questions about it, but there are some trial court cases, and HCD has publicly made statements in support of a very aggressive position about what builder's remedy means and how it should be interpreted. It also has not hesitated to refer matters to the Attorney General's office to seek compliance from cities when it believes that a city is not meeting its requirements under the Housing Accountability Act. And I think people will remember from a couple of years ago, San Francisco declining to approve a housing project, and the Attorney General's office beginning correspondence with the city about those actions. And related to that, the Attorney General's office has created a compliance unit that actively pursues litigation for non-compliant jurisdictions. I think it's important for everyone to understand, and I'm sorry I'm jumping ahead and really stepping on Elise's toes with this, but the housing element that's before the commission tonight has been reviewed by HCD, and HCD has said that it will be certified. So abandoning the current draft housing element would require submitting any changes to HCD. HCD would have to agree to those changes. There's no guarantee that they will do so. The process for review is very long. Yes, that's the State Department of Housing and Community Development that I mentioned earlier. They take a very strict view of compliance with state law requirements. So the main consequence from the city not having a certified element is basically uncertainty about what the future of development in the city means. I don't want to have too strong a call over the meeting, but not having a certified housing element does mean that the city lacks control over what happens with the future of development in the city, because it becomes subject to what developers decide to litigate and what judges decide to approve and disapprove. Approving the housing element at least gives the city some certainty about what happens in the future, avoids significant expenditures of time and more public dollars on pursuing a revision to the housing element, when HCD has said that they will approve the one that's before the commission tonight. And so, you know, to me, as a legal advisor to the city is that the consequence of the city ultimately, the planning commission is making a recommendation tonight, not approving or disapproving it. So it's totally up to the city council to decide whether to approve it. But the consequence of not having a certified housing element at this point is certainty versus uncertainty. And even if the certainty is, it includes things that may be disagreeable to some members of the public, it at least provides certainty about what the future of development is.
Thank you, and since we, sorry.
No, I just said, I think that's an important thing to bring out, because one of the things that, I think resulted from the last meeting that we had at the city chambers a couple months ago, is that there's a lot of angry people. And, I mean, now we have more space, which is good. I didn't have to go and share it there. It's awesome. But the thing that, we're all members of the community of Larkspur, and we're also members of the state of California. And there are certain things which that if we decide to bump the plan, that we are going to be facing a tremendous amount of litigation costs. And I just think that this is something that everybody could be aware of before we all get angry about things that we may or may not be able to control, which is the reason I asked the question. So.
Since this is an important point, and I want to make sure we understand this. You talked about builder's remedy, that if we don't, and I know we've jumped ahead now, I know we thought we were going to finish up the EIR, but we seem to have jumped ahead to have an element.
You should probably do it.
Well, I don't really have to finish it. It's about that if we don't approve the EIR, the general plan, and therefore the housing element, it would initiate something called a builder's remedy. Now, can you explain to me, as if I was a 5-year-old, what building remedy is?
So I'll just elaborate on.
Or I could try and explain it back to you, and you can tell me if I'm right.
Well, there are a number of aspects to it, so,
And then non-lawyer term,
Yeah,
I'm thinking I could maybe try and you tell me if I'm right,
I know.
which is.
well, what I was going to say is that I don't know what any one person thinks are the important points without covering all of it. I think it's difficult to gauge, but I can emphasize a few of the points that I made, but if you want to ask me some questions about your understanding, I can also confirm or explain them.
In simplistic terms, does it mean that a developer or contractor builder could come in and build whatever they want without city approval?
What it, yes and no. So here's the yes and the no. The way that the statute is written, what it says is at the most fundamental level, if the development project meets some criteria that are set out in state law, like it includes a certain number of affordable units, they're affordable at certain income levels, and the city does not have a certified housing element, then the city cannot deny that project. And it doesn't matter whether the city can't then use as a basis of denial, it's a housing project in a commercial district. It's a housing project that is 2 stories too tall, according to the municipal code. It's a development project that covers more of the lot than would otherwise be allowed. The city can't use any of those. The city can't use any of those as a basis for denial as long as it does not have a certified housing element. What I will say is that this is the view of the builder's remedy that is being litigated right now. That it is one that some trial courts have issued some rulings about that suggest that they are at least prepared to approve projects along those lines, or at least hold that city can't deny the project that's being proposed in those cases. So it does, I think that because until this cycle of housing elements and the cities have to do this every 8, 10, 12 years. there wasn't a lot of case law on the builder's remedy until recently, so, and there isn't much in the way of appellate case law, so we don't really know a lot of the answers, but we do know. What plaintiffs are saying, we do know what the State Department of Housing and Community Development is saying. And we know what some other state level and regional agencies are saying about it.
And how much time do we have? So let's say we don't approve anything tonight, and we say we want to wait and make further changes. Could a developer come tomorrow and submit a plan and do builder's remedy to build something? Or do they have to wait like another year? I mean, how much time do we have?
They could come tomorrow.
They could come tomorrow.
They could have filed something today. The issue is the city not having a certified housing element, and then to me. This is a contested issue, but also whether or not the city has to have a certified housing element at the time that it have to make a decision.
Has any developer or contractor submitted an application for a project under builder's remedy anywhere in California?
Yes, a number of them.
Isn't that, the North Magnolia project is basically under builder's remedy?
The North Magnolia project uses state density bonus law, not builder's remedy.
Okay.
I think there are communities near San Diego where there's builder's remedy that's currently happening, but.
And there are builder's remedy applications around the Bay Area.
And would builder's remedy cover the entire city of Larkspur, or could we limit them to just a portion of the city?
It's the entire city.
Is the entire city?
Yes.
Do you have any other comments? No. Okay, thank you. Any further questions based on that? Okay.
Are there any builder's remedy applications open in Larkspur?
We have a project submitted for a housing project at 1,000 Drake's Landing Road, which is one of the projects in the housing element as well. And they have also filed a builder's remedy application along with their housing project application. The project complies, or the staff is in support of the project, and it complies with what is in this draft housing element. So if the draft housing element is approved, essentially the zoning will be in place and they won't be asking for any exceptions.
Were the other questions relating to the housing element, or were they related to the environmental impact report? Environmental impact report? No.
Can you just define certified housing element?
So, sorry, so,
Define CHG certified housing element, what's that mean?
okay, I'm gonna go right into some.
So state law, states that, housing element has to be certified and provides a role for the State Department of Housing and Community Development in providing that certification. As I mentioned, state law does also refer to a city's ability to self-certify a housing element. Again, HCD, which is the State Department of Housing and Community Development, has made public statements that, in their view, avoiding some of these consequences in state law related to housing element requires their certification, and that is also an issue that is being reviewed. So I think that the, in terms of risk avoidance, it is reasonable to, understand in the context of this discussion that when we refer to a certified housing element, we mean one that the State Department of Housing and Community Development has said meets state law requirements. The housing element that is before the planning commission tonight, we have correspondence from HCD saying that they will certify this housing element. If we move forward with a revised document and we re-initiate a process with that department of the state about a series of back and forth communications about whether or not any changes would be acceptable.
And in the meantime, then the builder's remedy can come in.
Yeah, so my understanding from what I heard from the attorney is that if we don't approve the housing contracts and the various documents tonight, we could use builders remedy project.
Are that approved tonight, or it still has to go back to city council?
So, the city council, but I'm assuming that, given we're in the process of pushing this forward and improving it, that the state would look at this more favorably and not allow someone to come in with a positive remedy while we're improving this. Or is that not true?
It is true, HCD is monitoring every city that's still seeking to get its housing element approved. They are actively monitoring what cities are doing, and I think that they will. The position that they take with regard to any particular building friendly application will likely be influenced by whether or not they believe a city is actively attempting to be compliant.
Understood. And another question I had was, how many other cities in Marin County have approved their housing element, and we the first ones? No?
It's like most have approved and have a certified housing element. I don't think everyone. I'm not sure-
Most have already
I'm not sure
approved.
that Ross has their certified yet. And I think there's, well, the County of Marin, there's a lawsuit, so they're having to revise theirs in response to a lawsuit right now.
Okay, so we're not gonna be the first to do this.
We're one of the last.
One of the last, right? Okay, all right, thank you. Any more questions on environmental impact reports, which was the earlier part? Okay, I know we actually closed the public portion, but can we reopen it? Just assuming these questions are on EIR, if they're not, and if they're on housing elements, please can you hold them till later? EIR, just one question on EIR.
I'm just trying to get,
Can you please come to the lectern
Yes.
to speak?
Oh,
so we
yeah,
can-
can I just stand up?
I'm not sure the microphone is gonna pick that up, and there are.
You know, I can repeat back the question if she wants to say that.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around the water
Yeah.
issue. Because I've lived here for 45 years and I lived through the bringing water from the East Bay, the bridge. And there's a lot more people now than there were 40 years ago. We didn't have enough water then. And I don't see that the water district has all of a sudden like gotten a whole lot more water somewhere, and the drought situation. It just seems pretty incredible that they could actually make that statement.
Your question is, how did the Marin Water come up with the statement that there's enough water until
Yeah, I think
2045?
there'd be enough water for all these people that we're gonna add. We're adding more, we've added more over the last 40 years. And, I know how bad it was at one point, with the buckets in the shower.
Understood. So you had the very same question I asked right at the beginning, is how are we gonna make sure we have enough water?
Sure. But she guaranteed it's. Is that what?
You're running Marin Water.
And I would like to add that I was
You're
here.
not. They had all these people.
Thank you.
I was also here during that period of time and, I was here during the same drought you're speaking of, and people's lawns died. There's no place that you're gonna cut water if you have a similar drought again. All the people have come in since then, which has been over 40 years.
But now you want to add.
I don't.
If you want to comment, you want me to come to the podium, actually,
I have a couple of additional comments about this thing, just to try to explain the water situation a little bit. So, just because, there may be some additional context that might be helpful. So municipal water, like many water agencies, have to prepare, a plan that basically looks both at water conservation measures and at water supply. As part of building that plan, they talk to every jurisdiction within Marin that exercises land use authority or other authority that could impact water consumption or conservation efforts. That includes Larkspur having provided them with the draft general plan and the housing element that includes all the anticipated development. It includes the same information from every other the city and the county and the jurisdiction. Marine municipal water then takes all that information about anticipated growth, develops policies around water conservation, develops plans for enhancing water supply, and ultimately they prepared what's referred to as the 2015 Urban Water Management Plan, which they approved in January of this year, that explains how between water conservation efforts under normal conditions plus under drought conditions, and through enhanced water supply under each of those conditions, they believe that they will have adequate supply to serve all the residents who are likely to be within their service area during the period of growth that's anticipated under these housing elements. So they're making assertions about what they believe they can do both to obtain additional water and to implement measures to encourage conservation. And between the two, that as the area, as jurisdictions within their service area experience growth, that they will actually be able to serve sufficient water both under normal conditions and under drought conditions.
Thank you. So let's say Marine Water is just wrong and they just made a mistake. Is that preclude us from approving the EIR tonight so that we don't get into trouble with the state?
It does not. The way CEQA works, so again, that's the California Environmental Quality Act, which is the state law that governs the EIR process. Basically, since water supply is outside of the city's hands, that basically the city looks to the agency that is responsible for that, and if that agency, after reviewing the city's proposal, says that there will be adequate supply, that is sufficient for CEQA's purposes. If the district is wrong in the future, I don't believe that's going to be a surprise to them. They will begin to experience water supply issues so that they will have to implement measures that they've already identified as part of the urban water management plan. So even if they're wrong about supply, what that's going to mean is that they're going to have to take other measures that are identified in the plan.
Understood, thank you. So I would suggest that we move forward with EIR, because I'm sure a lot of people have comments on housing elements. On the EIR?
Yes.
Okay.
So.
I'm afraid I can't hear you. Could you come up to the podium, please? And you know, one thing we forgot to do is have everyone introduce themselves and then we can comment. So if we could please have that. I'm sorry, I didn't ask you to do that earlier.
And last name.
Yes, please.
Nancy Reeves. So because of this water situation. Because of the water situation, all these proposed new buildings just going to be cement without any greenery around them because there's not water to support any greenery. It just seems we've got the water coming in for people to use, but are these going to be buildings that are very stark and are not going to blend in with the greenery upper end?
Okay, thank you. Okay.
So hi, my name's Brooke Andrew, and I live in Green Bay. Do we have access to the EIR report? Because I know I haven't had a chance to review it. And does the public have access to that report?
Yes, it's located online at the city of Larkspur's website. I can.
Okay, so just so you know, I combed through there, never was able to find it to review it, and just based on looking at some of the items later that say certain sites say that no significant environmental impact report there, I would just comment that based on that review. So I haven't been able to see, I just don't think the public who it's noticed that this, last week had done the findings that review or through the action report.
Thank you. Any EIR comment? No, are they? Okay. No, let's wait till the housing element portion. We still have a staff report on that, so. All right, shall we, okay, anything else we want to say as a question?
I mean, I got some comments on, I mean, bringing it back to the EIR, I mean, the water issue, it seems like. It's not our job as planning commission to be reviewing the findings of the water agency. I mean, we at some level have to rely on the findings of the experts who are running that system and what they're able to find. And whether we may think that that's right or wrong, if we want to go down the path of reviewing and becoming water experts, which I know I'm not, I just don't think that would be wise of us.
Yeah, I agree, actually. It's a bit like when you're sick, you go to a doctor because they're the expert. Or if you need a legal document, you go to a lawyer because they're the expert. I mean, I'm sort of relying on the Marine Water Board to tell us what they believe is right. But I mean, people make mistakes. So we have a job we have to do tonight, and we're going to try and do the best we can. Relying on the consultants and the experts that know what they're doing, so. I feel like I've heard enough to make a motion.
You have a question here.
I think, you know what, I think we're gonna have to move on because. Want to raise it in the housing element portion, we can do that. Because otherwise I'm gonna be here all night on just the EIR, and I think there's a lot of comments on housing element.
I was actually gonna make a motion to approve the EIR. And
No.
I don't know if this thing's working. What is?
Go read it and stuff.
Oh, okay. Approval of the EIR. I would like to note that the EIR does say, very explicitly, Larkspur is mainly built out. And, I think that comes for the next part, but, I think that we should send the EIR.
You want to make a motion? 1 second.
Right, can I clarify that motion? What we're looking for is a resolution to adopt the planning commission resolution, or a motion to adopt the planning commission resolution recommending that the city council certify the environmental impact report and adopt the general plan 2040 and direct the planning commission chair to sign the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Chalmers,
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher,
Yes.
Commissioner Campbell,
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes.
and Commissioner Hall is recused, so the motion passes.
Thank you. We'd like to move on to the housing element. I know a lot of people have comments and questions on that. Do we please have the staff report?
So tonight you're considering the 2023 to 2031 housing element as well as an ordinance that would adopt or would implement policies in the housing element and some of the policies in the 2040 general plan. The housing element is a document that needs to be updated every 8 years. It is part of the general plan, but it's one that is under or gets reviewed by the state every 8 years. And it outlines programs and policies to achieve local housing objectives and identifies sites for potential development of housing at various income levels in order to meet the city's share of the regional housing need allocation. And the regional housing need allocation is a number that the state sets for the Bay Area, the Bay Area region. The Association of Bay Area Governments works with the committee to develop a methodology to divide that number between all the jurisdictions of the Bay Area. The regional number of housing units is about 441,000 that the state is expecting the Bay Area to apply for to be constructed in the next 8 years. And the city's share of that is 970 units. The housing element also analyzes constraints to housing element, production and evaluates affirmatively furthering fair housing. The housing element was developed, starting with a housing community workshop on housing, and then there was a housing steering committee that was formed by the city council that had 2 members of the planning commission and 2 members of the city council. They held a number of meetings. The city had a consultant, EMC, that did a lot of data collection and analysis and prepared an initial draft, and they reviewed that with the Department of Housing and Community Development. The steering committee reviewed the draft. The draft was publicized for a 30-day public review period, and then it was submitted to the state after that, and then it's been revised 2 or 3 additional times and resubmitted to the state. The planning commission held a meeting on the draft housing element in December of 2023 and received a lot of comments from the public. And currently, or then the plan was revised again, resubmitted to the state. The state has indicated informally that they are ready to certify the housing element. We've addressed all the concerns from their last review. So at this point, we're requesting, or it's at a point of planning commission recommendation on the housing element. After you make a recommendation, it would go to the city council for adoption, and then we would resubmit the housing element to the state for certification. As I mentioned, there's been a lot of outreach on the plan since 2022, which this process started with workshops. There was the survey, we've done tabling and events. Flyers were posted with information on the survey. There was specific stakeholder meetings, consulted with the Native American tribes. There was publicity on various social media accounts. And again, the most comments were received in December at the last planning commission hearing. The housing element has goals for the city. The goals are to facilitate housing construction and to protect affordable housing and improve the housing stock. The goal also is to provide new affordable and special needs housing, to have sustainable development and energy conservation, and to publicize housing needs and resources to the public. The first goal of facilitating housing construction has 13 policies, and I won't go through all of them, but some of the significant ones are promoting transit-oriented housing developments and having housing in commercial zones. And then I'll just move on to goal 2, which is protect affordable housing and improve housing stock. Also has 3 policies, including preserving existing affordable housing, preserving existing housing, and also facilitating rehabilitation of existing housing. Oh, you guys just don't have the slides. Okay. That's all I'll do. So, I think we already got to that one, goal 3. Oh, anyway, there's 14 policies under goal 3, which is to provide new affordable and other housing. There's policies to create new accessory dwelling units. Find funding for affordable housing. I don't want to go over all the documents because there's so many people here tonight, but that's why the document is so voluminous, because it does have a lot of goals and policies in it. You want to go to the next one? Goal 4 is to have sustainable development and energy conservation. The plan incorporates programs from the climate action plan in order to build energy conserving housing, and it does include policies for and new homes would be required to have water conserving landscaping. They are required to have landscaping, but the water district does require those plans to be water conserving. They answered one of the questions. Next one is reading it all here. Public housing needs programs to include the community in future revision, to promote programs that are available right now for supporting housing. And so including supporting the residents of the mobile home park by informing them of the the state programs that are available to them. And, promoting other housing awards. Then there's 30 programs to implement all the goal policies. And all of those goals have timelines and funding sources and objectives, and this is different than years past where we could have programs in the housing element that were more vague and didn't really have specific timelines. Now the state is extra sure to ensure that if we have a program, especially if it's one of their required programs, that we have a commitment to follow it through. The draft ordinance that is before you tonight would implement some of the programs in the housing element, including the housing element overlay, which zones, gives a special overlay for the certain housing, sites that are identified in the inventory. It would also amend parking regulations for emergency shelters to bring them into conformance with state law. It allows residential use of the administrative professional district, which is also one of the policies in the 2040 general plan. And then it would eliminate minimum unit sizes that are in our current zoning regulations. So I believe most of the districts require a 450 square foot minimum unit size. And in order to eliminate that constraint to housing development, we would recommend deleting that and the requirement, which does not smaller units. I mentioned the regional housing unit application. The cities prior, the one that we're operating under right now, it was only 132 units. All of the Marin County and Bay Area regions have received much higher allocations for this cycle, and the cities is almost 1,000 units, with about half of those being affordable units that the city needs to plan for. And the city is allowed to deduct units that have been approved or are under construction since June 30th of 2022. So deducting those units that we've already approved and that are under construction, we're only going to plan now for 874 units. So the plan has to identify sites within the city of Larkspur where the 874 new units will be built. And it also has to identify sites where units of certain income categories can be built. And so market rate housing units, those are more easy ones to find sites for, but it's more difficult to find lots where affordable housing is required to construct housing. So the part of the plan is to have accessory dwelling units, about roughly 60 accessory dwelling units. I actually think there'll be more built housing period, and the state won't let us because our past history of in recent years weren't being approved. And so the plan includes more housing than what is necessary, and there's a total of 1,194 units that are proposed as realistically developed in our housing element. But I wanted to point out, since James Holmes pointed out, that the actual plan for rezoning the sites would allow for significantly more units than that. So approximately, like, I think it's over 1,500 units that would be allowed with the zoning. Just the plan isn't expected to be built. And the state recommends that the city have a buffer, that we never fall below the number that we're, the zoning sites available for the number that we're supposed to construct in the 8-year cycle. So we've aimed for a buffer of 15%, which is what's recommended for the lumber income. And there's just going to be higher buffers for the other income levels, because most of the or we just identified a lot of market rate sites. Most of the sites will be developed with at least 20% affordable housing, since that's what the city requires. However, the state doesn't accept that as they want to accept that every project will actually build 20%, because we do give it's an out that they could be delivered in PFD in lieu of providing that 20% for housing. So in any event, the the plan has an adequate buffer, and if we start eliminating lower income units, the buffer quickly will, it will be quickly out of, compliance with the housing. If some of the lower income units are eliminated from the plan, and the project is approved and built as much as they are expected to build them. So for identifying lower income sites, in the city of Larkspur, because a lot of our sites are small, and state will really only accept sites, they will only believe that affordable housing can be built on the site if it's at least a half an acre in size, but smaller than 10 acres in size. So if a site is less than a half an acre, an affordable housing developer can't build about 50 units of housing, which is what they need to come up with an affordable housing project. They require lower income sites to be zoned at least 50 units an acre, which isn't a significant problem in Larkspur because most sites are already at that level of density. But that just trying to find units or sites that are available and also at least a half an acre, something that the challenge is big. We're gonna go over the site inventory of the map's been online. There's really 4 general areas where housing is proposed: in Larkspur Landing, in the area of Complex Plaza, the Greenbury area. There's some in North Bend, and then there's some down too. And then Alex and full signatures through the actual sites again. The first area is the Larkspur Landing neighborhood, and this is, of course, the area near transit and both the ferry and the smart station. So the first site A is the exchange, which is a site developed commercial office building. And the proposal here is not to demolish or convert the office spaces to residential, but the property owner is interested in building a housing project in the parking lot. So within the site, where there's an empty, well, not maybe not, but there's a parking lot there that they was interested in building about 230 units of housing there that would serve the place at the office building. So that site's been listed at with a minimum of 25 units an acre and a maximum of 35 units an acre. And the plan allows for the site to be reconfigured in order for them to possibly carve or subdivide that off of the other sites that share densities and transfer the density of the other parts into that parcel in order to make that project something that can be financed. Site D is the Rankin Short site, and this site is listed because it also is built in housing. It's been listed for 25 to 36 units an acre for roughly up to 7 acres. The site itself is much larger than that, but it's on 16 units. So this would easily be able to be identified for housing. The 2 large side. The owner is in the plan envisions someone redeveloping the area near the Bed Bath and Beyond, the empty structure that the Bed Bath and Beyond site. A developer is interested in the site and also expressed that housing could actually be developed on the opposite side of the shopping center. So here. The 2 best sites in the housing moment, this vacant one, which was the only vacant site that the city has to propose for housing, which is a portion of the Ross Valley Sanitary District site that was originally the district office, but they moved the district office to Standard Health. So this site is going to be housing and needs of the state and vacant, so it's easy to justify for. So proposed an acre, and then it's adjacent to the larger district. This one's not considered vacant because it does have fewer buildings on it and similar compensation that the district intends to be paid. But it's a large site, but it's because it's ready to be developed and cleaned up after in the plan. It's easier to convince the state that this can be plus it's owned by a public agency, so if the agency was considered for sale, papers offered. This one is zoned at 25 to 35 units an acre, and that hasn't changed. We actually have spoken to them about increasing the density on the site. There's so much interest in putting in the Larkspur landing area, and they were not interested in going higher. They just said that that they didn't, the higher minimum density would be harder to get people interested in housing development, and they would prefer the 14th Francis Drake is where the electric bike store is, and there's the electric bike store as well as to the right of it, there's commercial structures. And this site has been included at 25 to 45 dwelling units an acre. That's an increase over the last plan. It was in the last version, 25 to 35 dwelling units an acre. So it allowed up to 32 units of housing, but a developer and this one, the draft ordinance includes a number, well, actually, like the last, it's for district site. The draft ordinance includes a number of site-specific conditions of approval to try to address potential environmental impact in general sites and citizens. And the prior site, the public street site, has a long list of environmental conditions that were taken from that site. Because if these projects came in approval, there wouldn't be environmental. It would just come over building permit only to address all of those environmental conditions. 100 Quarry Road is in here. A property owner in Lane sold, and there's no interest in selling the property, but they I don't believe it's changed yet, but a property owner has with a proposal to do 16 second units at the site by converting existing parking spaces to second units. So that was significant enough that we could put it in this plan for collaboration. And that's been just included in second units. There's other multi-family developments in the city that might be also interested in adding second units. Redwood Highway, I'm familiar with the Complex site and Trader Joe's. There's probably an interest in developing housing at this site. We have no preliminary plan, so I don't know if they intend to replace commercial with housing or add housing to the existing commercial uses. But this is in the plan for 35 to 45 dwelling units an acre that would, and it's in the proposed for 151 units of housing. And then the Greenbrae neighborhood includes 5 different sites. This one has been added 100 to 300 Drake's Landing Office Park. When we reduced the density downtown, we added this site here for up to 25 dwelling units an acre for only 2 acres of the site. Again, this is a larger site, but with the would be allowed for up to essentially 50 units of housing. And the property owner, right, this site is very well rented out too, so we don't expect that they would remove commercial to replace it with housing, but there are large parking lot areas where someone may be able to propose a housing development, or the property owner could convert existing commercial, but we just don't see that as likely to happen. So it doesn't have any special conditions, but it does, in order to facilitate development, it allows overriding the plans that are already in place for the site that would include any sort of housing development or changes without going through both planning commission and city council, which could deter a housing project from coming forward. 1000 Drake's Landing is a project that's already been submitted, so that bottom right illustration is a photo montage of the project that we received. So the project's been included for 19 units, which is what's been proposed. The current project that we have is for 15 units of above moderate housing, 4 units of low income housing. And it would replace the office building at the site. So this one isn't in the plan for by right approval, and it doesn't get a special overlay, but it's in for rezoning from commercial and plan development to multifamily residential. And then we're also recommending that the objective standard zone for this site would change. It's got like a downtown commercial designation, and it would be changed to the suburban designation. And the design of the project right now is fairly in compliance with the objective design standards. There are asking for exceptions. And that's another reason why we didn't. Because we didn't qualify, because it doesn't meet our objective standards. 511 Francis Drake Boulevard and 505, they're both sites were added to this draft of the housing development. So added since the December meeting at suggestions from the public. They're both vacant office buildings. One of them has been approved for a bank that hasn't submitted plans for building permit yet. And then the other building has just been vacant for a long time. They this one here is the former real estate office. The zoning currently allows for 21 dwelling units an acre. It's proposed to be increased to 25 to 35 dwelling units an acre, which doesn't increase the development potential too much. Let me see if I can find my sheet with this one. The rezoning would permit up to 20 units to acre at the site. 505 Sir Francis Drake is just 2 doors down. It was formerly used as a surgery office, I believe. It currently allows housing at 21 units an acre or 7 units, and the rezoning would permit up to 11 units at the site. Both of these sites are just as made for one right now. And then 501 Via Casillas, which is the single highest, is also on the housing development plan. And this is proposed primarily because they have a large parking area at the lower level of the site, as well as the land surrounding that parking area where housing might be developed. And so it's in the plan for rezoning, and the zoning here is the highest in the plan at 50 to 60 units an acre, but that's because the existing site already has 206 units, and the rezoning would allow an additional up to 60 units to be built at the site. The plan includes it for 50 units for affordable housing. There is a special condition in the draft ordinance to address parking at the site, and it requires, if a project were to come in, requires them to submit a parking management plan that identifies the existing parking problems that we've heard from neighbors at the site. To address the existing parking demand, how many existing spaces there are, measures for improving the parking, and also restricts any parking from being eliminated at the site unless they can show that that the existing parking and the parking management plan is adequate. I turn over to Joe. I like the downtown.
Okay, yes, thank you. So the first site for the downtown area, that is the Mountain Racket Club. This was on the draft which you reviewed December 2023. The main change was at the time it was given an extra density of 45 units an acre. That's been reduced to 21 units an acre, which is what it is currently. It would provide 50 lower income units.
Can you speak a little louder?
Sure, sorry, is this good? I don't want to be too loud here. So in case you missed that, it was proposed for a much higher density in the last draft. It's been reduced. It would provide 50 low income units. The next site, as everyone I'm sure is aware, is the Lucky Supermarket, which is currently vacant. This was also in the December 2023 draft. And this one, the main change here is that so there's a provision written in that if they include, whoever wants to do a project here, if they include a grocery store that is between 10,000 and 30,000 square feet. They hit by a rented housing development there. And if they don't provide a grocery store, it would be still potentially by right under the state housing laws. Next two sites are 557 and 599 Magnolia. These are the two structures just north of the art theater. These are proposed for 35 to 45 dwelling units, an acre. That would be about 11 units on site. They would have to replace the 5 units that are existing there if they do choose to redevelop. And then 546 to 556, both for 19 units at 21 dwelling units, an acre, was used in a previous cycle. And then our dentist office at 426 and 428 Magnolia, these are right down the street from City Hall. And this is also proposed for 35 to 45 dwelling units, an acre, and that would be 11 moderate income units and 4 above moderate income units. I'll just continue. So the next site, these are North Magnolia now. This is 980 through 996 Magnolia. It's about half an acre in size, and the allowed density in the housing element right now is 15 to 25 dwelling units an acre. And the realistic capacity there is about 8 units above moderate income.
What's next one? Response. So, the next one is there's two more, which one is the Masonic Lodge. This is proposed, it's currently allowed 21 dwelling units an acre, it's proposed at 25 dwelling units an acre. And it's proposed for 10 moderate income units. I think the existing zoning allows 10 units today. The proposed zoning would allow up to 12 units. And then the final site is a site that's for sale. That's why this one was added. This wasn't in the prior plan. And this is the balloon light store, but it also includes, or there's it's actually made up of 2 lots, lot 7 and 8 of the Murray tract. The left side is the balloon delights, which is lot 7. The right side is lot 8, which has a former railroad building that was moved to the site, and then behind that is a duplex. And so it could be just included for the left side, lot 7. Either way, it's identified for a place where housing could be built. There's not a significant incentive for increased development at the site. It's currently 21 units an acre. It goes to up to 25, but that really doesn't change the development potential for each lot. Separately, each lot is only 4 units. Combined, they might be able to get 9 with the increased density, and it might be easier to develop housing because they can use a shared driveway. So that's why the lot was included with both, instead of just one or the other. Other site. And that's it for the inventory. What we're recommending tonight is that the planning commission ask questions of staff, open the public hearing to get comments on the sites, discuss the site, discuss the item, and then make the motion to approve resolution 2024-002, which would be recommending the city council adopt the 2023-2031 housing element, as well as the draft ordinance to implement the housing element in the general plan, and also to direct the chair to sign the resolution. And that concludes our staff report. Unless you have questions for us.
Thank you very much, Elise. And Alex. Do we have any questions for staff?
Yeah, I do. Could I have some clarification on the side of the Lucky store? I'm a little confused about what you said, Alex, in terms of. My understanding is that we cannot necessarily tell a developer that they have to include a grocery store in that. We could recommend that they do, but, you know, from an economic standpoint, I feel wonder if Alberts have a letter about the fact that if it's not Tesla enough, economically, that there's no authority that we have as a city to require to do so.
Yeah, so for clarity, that provision about including a grocery store, that's just a bonus. But you're correct, there is no requirement written into that, as that they must put the grocery store back on that site.
How much of this?
It's really just a difference in process, it becomes all by right object under the housing element, if they include a grocery store, if they don't include a grocery store. There might be a little more of a review process, but they can still utilize various state housing laws to essentially accomplish the same goal.
More questions from the public and have the commissioner in questions first. I think you ask the questions, but I'm gonna hold before we hear from the public, and then I'll come back to my questions at the end. And I know probably all of you would like to speak. So we'll open it up to the audience for tonight. Will you please come up to the podium if you have a comment? My phone's not lining up. Could you please limit your comments to 3 minutes? We'll have Alex set the timer. And could you please introduce your name if you make a comment? Thank you very much.
Jane Bresby. This is regarding the 501 vacancy, this the Channel Finances. And it's a senior facility, if someone doesn't know about it. It has 52 seniors. And it has 23 parking spots. That's just for the people that live there. The people that work there park on the street and in the lot in the back that they are considering. There are many aides that also work there. These people have no parking spots, they park on the street. There are many of them, because they're hired either by the families of the residents or the residents themselves. We have gone through 3 years of calling the police, the town. We've spoken to Scott Metco and Ethan Skinner and the code enforcement for traffic. We have an island on the street. It's a very narrow street. We have the fire department there more than 2 or 3 times a month, where residents require help getting to the hospital. So the fire truck parks in the middle of the street, right? You can't get emergency vehicles through this street. We finally fought for a spot, a 20-minute spot in front of our building, so we could get packages, deliveries, people to be picked up. And they finally put a sign up in the police department, because they knew how many times we've called. And I think that if they're gonna take away their parking lot, which has 32 spots in the back, where are these people gonna park? Where are they gonna put their buses? They don't have parking for guests. And I think it would be a site that is extremely dense right now with public residences. It's all buildings up there and on the hills. But there's just not enough parking. And I think this has to be taken into consideration.
Thank you for your comment.
Gerald Young, I'm complaining about the same place. I want to know exactly what sort of parking is going to be provided. You said the parking lot would be replaced, or the parking spaces will be replaced. I don't feel that if the Tamalpais were not there right now, with the way they built the building and provided parking, you never would have approved the building. I don't think they meet code standards with the number of parking lot slots they have. And if you take away 32 slots, you destroy the neighborhood.
Thank you. Could we please have your name?
Harold Young.
Hello, my name is Betty Horowitz, and I want to talk to you about Area M, not the Market Club. At the last city hall meeting, the whole room said Larkspur Landing, because it's so densely populated right now downtown Larkspur. So I'm really glad to see all of, so much in Larkspur and A, B, C, D, E, so that's nice. But little tiny Larkspur, what is the intention of the racket club? I know it's a new owner, but you said 50 units. Can you just tell me how high it's going to be? The building, the 50 units, 2 stories, how much in the racket club is proposed?
Okay, we're gonna take these comments, we'll address it at the end. June, but I know what you're saying. You want to know how high the building would be if they ever developed an town.
So you have power of zoning, all of you, and you could stop this from happening right downtown Larkspur. It's so packed, it's so crowded. And the other thing that I want to mention is you said someone in the council doesn't want something in his area, a little open space area. That's kind of like, we all don't want things in our area, but you're blocking off an area because of the council member. Can you tell me anything about that? You mentioned her.
I think you misunderstood that. It's,
You said a council member doesn't want a certain open, to be anything to be built in a certain open space.
no, it was just, in order to avoid a conflict, it was removed from the general plan. And it was just, it stayed there. There's nothing to do with personal opinion.
You told us.
So
The council member didn't want it in his neighborhood. We all heard that. Yeah.
Let's do this, to be consistent. I think it's not common, if that is an incorrect interpretation.
Would be
Yeah, it would be a conflict, so you still want the comment addressed at the end.
I'm concerned about I'm concerned about M, and I don't know how many floors. Is the racket club owner, the new owner, did he come out to you and say he wants to develop that whole racket club, and what's going on with that? Please, can you tell me?
Right, so it sounds like some very specific questions about them out, and we will address it at the end. There's a lot of people standing to the jury.
Any questions about that? Because it's a big area.
I understand that, and we just would like everyone to get through their comments and questions, and maybe we'll have to. You may not be the only one to ask the same question.
Stay here, I live in New Larkspur Landing in Grace Cove. When they proposed Oak Hill project that's just outside of Larkspur. So I have familiarity with this issue. Hopefully I can save some people some time and say what these good volunteers can. This is all kind of movie theater. Because they're talking about, yeah, everyone's assuming that there's actually gonna be a development starting immediately on all these sites that are listed, and I can tell you there's not. The number of private sector developers who are truly interested in developing right now, going for financing is zero, because I'm in this industry and I know they can't get loans for it. The affordable unit counts that are in 50% of the total number, forget it, that's not happening without massive subsidies and the money for those is coming from. So all that needs to happen here really is the city needs an approved housing amendment. First, to stop something I think everyone would object to, which is a builder being able to come in and maybe a judge lets them build whatever they want regardless of standards. So, you know, a 10-story building on Madrone, or, you know, something that covers the entire lot, or something else that's just inconsistent with common sense zoning standards. So I would hope, just put your minds at ease. Don't assume that every single site is gonna get developed, because I can tell you, given economic conditions, they're not. The only ones that might even have planned to develop by the end of the housing element period are the Ross Valley parcel, and maybe something at the Lucky, on Magnolia. Maybe, I doubt it, but that's really the only other one. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Could you just repeat your name?
David Hare, HER.
Hi, Harris Planning. First of all, thanks for your time. You guys are. imposed on you in the state, so I fully understand that. My issue is specifically with sites, H9. 100 Drake's Landing and 1,000 Drake's Landing, I understand now, maybe a little bit too late for 1,000 Drake's Landing, but with regard to 100 Drake's Landing, one of the issues or concerns that I have is the traffic impact. Right now, that area, you know, the Serpent Strait, the freeways and vice versa, it's already, you know, an overloaded bottleneck. One of the policies of building safe housing. There's consistently traffic all the way down Serpent Strait Serpent Strait and freeway stretching both times into Centerville. So I'm just a little bit worried about the high density housing they put right there. Area that's very overloaded. Number two, there's already a dirt block space in Larkspur. Potentially getting rid of the office space on 100 Drake's Cove would basically bring the housing, the office inventory down to zero. Of course, people inside Larkspur, quality of life and traffic impact. Further, the next in Pittsburgh. The last thing is actually a neighbor of mine in Peters, and I wanted me to share this with the committee and actually echo these words. In the interest of I'll spare the introduction. Larkspur and Green Bay is a very special place. People lay roots here because of its dependable suburban character that's been in place for decades. It's a social contract that has been in place the 5 decades that I've lived here. Unfortunately, that social contract, which is defined this area and makes it attractive, is getting tested. I understand this is being imposed by the state and specifically by consultants who, given the sites they've recommended, clearly are not from here, have never been here, and or have not given any consideration to the social and economic dynamics of the area. So I don't envy the position our whole planning committee has been. My solution is to concentrate the high density housing in areas with minimal to the existing citizenry who chose to live here because of its longstanding low density suburban nature, and future citizens that our growth and prosperity depends on will no doubt be attracted to this area for the same reasons everyone else. For example, Drake's Cove and Country Park, which is the only site that directly meets the stated policy of transit oriented housing. Those areas already have high density housing, already have more generally housing. It makes more sense to concentrate the high density housing in areas that are already higher density. Furthermore, it seems that was the area where we wanted to concentrate the new zoning requirements in the last housing December. Unfortunately, don't see that this revised housing was either. Lastly, there's sufficient room to impact meaningfully on the number of housing units to be or at least approved. Larkspur's regional housing allocation needs or RENA being says 979 units, subtracting for ADUs and units entitled, committed, or open space. 3 reduces the requirement to roughly 850. This housing element plan provides for nearly 1,500 units, about 700 units more than required. We can therefore meaningfully cut down on the number of units in this housing element. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bill McQuaid, Green Bay. I had a question. I was wondering if there will be adequate sewer capacity for 900 units. And then my second question is, will all the 900 units include at least one parking space for each unit? So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Sam Rankin. I live in Green Bay on South Lisa Drive below the proposed 501 this property. A 22 unit condominium complex. And
Do you want to go into the?
oh, I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yes.
Anyways, that side, as you probably know, is extremely steep. It's a very steep hill. And in the winter, during the storms, some of our units have gotten flooded in the basements. I don't know exactly how it's happening, but some of it is runoff from the adjacent development that's getting considerable. Some of it, I think, is just that hill is a huge sponge, and the weight of it is squeezing water even after the storms are gone into the basements of. There's at least one unit that they just continuously run the sump pump to pump water out. So I don't know if that's to me, it seems like building 50 units up behind us in this steep hill might not be a great thing for this flooding situation, and if it is built. I would hope that it'll be taken really seriously to prevent that from happening, from exacerbating what we're already experiencing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Keith Montana. I live in Madrid Canyon. My first question is for Sky. You mentioned that the law is that we could self-certify. Then you also mentioned that the state is saying that the law is that they need to be certified by them. So which is the law? That would be my first question.
Right.
Secondly, it seems, and I'm just kind of echoing the other people, that the last go around, we all mentioned keep everything in the high density areas, i.e. Larkspur Landing area, kind of spare the downtown. It looks like that didn't really go over where we've got sites all over the place. All very insignificant, 8 units here, 10 units there, doesn't really seem that that's gonna add up to the 8, obviously. But my question would be, Larkspur has always been very particular on getting projects approved and having parking for everything. It seems like all the downtown stuff is really taking up parking lots, and parking spaces. So how do you people as the planning commission plan to maintain parking, not only for the existing businesses and residences, but also all these new residences? I mean, do you plan on having parking structures under every building that they build? About that. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brooke Andrian. Unfortunately, I never received any of that community outreach, over the years. It's noted in that slide that's been in Congress in 2023 has been an unincorporated green break. So I didn't get that outreach, but I'm still within 70 feet of 2 proposed sites, J and K, and was only notified last week. So my questions are, is there intent to make any adjustments to, the proposed housing element based on feedback from impacted residents at this meeting? And right across the street from 2 of the sites, only notified last week. It doesn't feel like that we have a voice at this point. Will any changes be made to the housing element based on feedback from impacted residents given tonight this meeting? Since this was the first notification for some of us. It seems like the intent is to certify tonight. So was the notice sent by us last week effectively unanswerable? Also the questions about why was the 512 Magnolia location deleted from the inventory? I had questions about, is there equity in the spatial distribution of the new development and rezoning? It appears the overwhelming majority is in the margins, impacting areas that already carry the load of the new development and housing, and not, more central to downtown. My other questions are, can campus locations, instead of being demolished and being just designed as adaptive use and remain in the existing building footprints, demolishing and new construction is a significantly more of an environmental impact, which we'd like to avoid. And I'd like to challenge the findings that there are no environmental constraints for sites J and K at 511 and 505 Francis Drake. Those units there could potentially cast a shadow that prevents natural light from that has historically been in the neighborhood, in my backyard, in my windows, and I believe that this qualifies as environmental concern. The blocks in front of and adjacent to Bon Air have significantly more jams throughout the day, leading to increased emissions and impacting the air quality in those adjacent neighborhoods. So my question was, has a traffic study been done to see the impacts that 511 and 505 the Francis Drake would have? Was a key pilot that study to support the EIR. My question is, can we maintain the max units allowed under the existing zoning at those 2 locations, J and K, built within the existing zoning envelopes, so less than that environmental. And lastly, why for those sites closer to downtown reducing capacity. If the original proposed units were maintained here, then there would have been the need to add this new site dating A and December. These new additions have significant environmental impact.
Just to clarify, the question you were questioning why we were taking away units, both downtown and moving to local.
I think there's been a reallocation for some of the densities downtown, and then put.
Okay, I said, thank you.
Hi there, my name is Lindsay, I'm the president of Greenbury. We want to echo a lot of what Paris said, locations H and I. In particular, the traffic, I'm not gonna reiterate everything you said, but I do want to context in that to get to the units at H and I, there is only one to take a left at the light of the Lion Center. And you can take a left on Berry Way, straight go or a U-turn. Either way, there will be significant traffic impacts, and that will also impact our neighbors. Everybody uses Sir Francis Baker's and thoroughfare to get to Ross, to get to Sansone, and Fairfax, so this would be a and if, I suppose, in taking the left and then going to the creeks, there is a new here being built there, and folks go there with the number of additional units. That is a safety concern as well, with all the children playing there. As you know, it wasn't built close to the water, instead it was built. So I think that is a significant concern to take into account. And echo the question just about what mitigation studies have been conducted. And thank you very much. And if I may, I wonder if I heard the point about Ross Valley. It sounds like it has any issues with that location, and then you did push for additional density to the state of mind. I wonder if there are any additional benefits that could be offered to have them consider that. Just given the passion that I see in the room, it seems that that may be worth the second. So thank you very much for your time and acknowledgement of the position. Thank you.
Hi, Janet had living room, right? Close to the area that she was just referring to. And I had a question for Elise. She had got back to me and I wanted to clarify something. So part of Greenbury is in the county, and around us is Larkspur. And so all this housing that's going around the part that's the county, apparently the county also is going to have a demand for housing. So on top of all the housing that you're adding in our area, there's also going to be a commitment of Greenbury and Kentfield to add more housing. So we've got Sir Francis Drake Boulevard it's already a mess. So I just wanted to clarify that and let everybody else know that this isn't all the housing in that area on Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, that the county's gonna add more. That's all. Thank you. And I just wanted to clarify that. Is that true?
Yes, yeah, okay, thank you.
Erica later, Larkspur. So I had a couple questions. One question is about the Lucky site. I heard the thing about the grocery store, maybe not, but I didn't hear was how many units were proposed for that site. It also seemed like in the original proposal, it was going to take out a lot of the gas station, a lot of the businesses there. I do know that some of the business owners there have no idea that any of this is happening, so I don't know how much canvassing of actual business owners you've done. So I'm just really curious as to how many units are being proposed for the Lucky site. The second thing I'd like to say is just that I live at Larkspur Isle, which is across from the Mount Tam Rec Club, and we are between the creek and Magnolia, Lucky Drive, all that. we have significant flooding there. And I mean, significant. There are times that we get stuck as residents and cannot drive out and cannot walk out unless we have actual like thigh-high boots on, which I'm not exaggerating. So one of my questions, does Larkspur in general, and especially that particular area, but you know, Larkspur in general only has one road really that goes. So what is the evacuation plan if there were disasters? The traffic is going to be impacted significantly when school's in. All of the schools with parents picking up kids and the kids driving and everything like that is incredibly gridlocked. So we're already adding quite a few units, and as the lady who spoke about the senior home spoke, I don't understand. I mean, I have a paddleboard. That may be my way of exiting. So just want to know about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Miles O'Dwyer. I live at Larkspur Isle. And I'm here I took the information that was provided in the announcement that we all received last week and converted that into for downtown, the area essentially at the intersection of Doherty and Magnolia. So that included the One Larkspur Plaza Drive, which is the Mountain Racket Club, 560 Magnolia, which is Larkspur, which is Lucky's, then 548, 556 Magnolia, 557, 559 Magnolia, and 426, 478, 1317 Rice Lane. All of those are in that document as being impacted and potentially development sites. That creates 179 units that are going into and on that intersection of Magnolia and Doherty. Now, that intersection, of course, is where all of the traffic going to Redwood High School and Hall Middle School travel at least twice a day. There will be on that intersection, using an average number of cars, ownerships in Marin County parked or traveling, 358 cars will be coming through that intersection every day, possibly twice a day, to drop their kids off and to pick them up again. I'd like to know how you plan on, one, having that many parking places. For instance, in the 426, 428, 1317 Rice Lane, there's right now 3 units in that, which would, at an average cars, has 6 cars there. The plan allows that to go up to an additional 11 units to get to 14, which means there's going to be 28 cars that we're going to try and park somewhere on Magnolia Avenue in front of that building, or where the 3 cars are currently parked in the back. And I'd like to know how that can plan to be done. How high will that building have to go in order to get the underground parking in place without ruining field downtown?
Thank you very much.
Fisher, I'm Deb Carbo with Safeway Albertsons Corporate Real Estate. Eric Bolzer, our senior director, wrote a letter today, and I just wanted to make sure that it got into the record. And the other thing I'd like to add is that we've been working really hard on this since our tenant vacated Lucky. And we just learned actually last week that it was being proposed to be downzoned, if you will, from 40 units per acre to 21. We would respectfully request that it continue to be 40 and it be by right. Thank you.
I'm Wendy Sacuzo. I live downtown right across from Lucky. I'm very curious about that letter. Happy to be public. One of my comments. The next one is I really like Hannah, you know, someone in black shirt a couple months ago said the impact on not just parking downtown, but the community aspect. Kids walking to school, being nearly run over by cars daily. More cars being added. Sure.
Yeah, close to.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I was thinking of my phone.
Yeah, my main concerns echo like came from the lecture about the impact on parking, the community spaces downtown, the business owners, and the impact that this housing downtown will have on those things. It's currently not safe for my kids to walk to school. We've been nearly hit by the cars many times before with that number of cars coming through. I can't imagine that it would be safe. We also get regular parking tickets living downtown. And so I think there needs to be some type of situation where residents have permits if this happens. We don't have enough parking and I can't imagine how we're going to accommodate more housing downtown.
Thank you very much. Hey, our commissioners, my name is Kari Isaiah, and I live in Greenbrier. It's really interesting to me that guys need to pass the EIR application before talking to counseling. Because a lot of what I'm hearing people say here is these sites do have environmental, and I noticed that some of them are listed on there. But I'm specifically concerned about the sites J and K and Sir Francis Drake. So I would like to echo what Brooke said about our concerns for traffic. To me, traffic is an environmental concern. It's a pollutant. And also, since I do live in Greenbrier, I see a lot of emergency vehicles get stuck on Sir Francis Drake going to Burn General or Health, which is what it's called. So that's a concern of mine. See where those locations get approved. Thank you. And actually, one more question, if you could just add this to your list. It was mentioned multiple times. It's getting a bonus, a density bonuses, and I was wondering what that was. Okay.
Hello, I'm Lelia Longtoe, and I'm a member of the Larkspur Heritage Preservation Meeting. And I just wanted to mention something about Site Q, the dentist's office downtown. It is part of the National Register of Historic Places, or 2 blocks or 3 blocks of very special historic significance. So whatever you decide to allow there, I think you need to take into concern that it be compatible with the rest of downtown. And that not set up a precedent where old buildings can be torn down. We want to preserve our historic site downtown, especially. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Jim Gardner, live in Larkspur, Creekside neighborhood. Back when Rose Lane was redeveloped, I think, quite frankly, the city missed a great opportunity there. A large site could have supported a lot higher densities and answered housing needs other than a relatively small number of $2 million single family homes and a few senior units, basically, they're mostly $1 million and up. I bring that up because I think you're on the brink of missing another great opportunity, which is a site. I totally endorse what the speaker from Albertson said. That is a site that's within walking distance of a high school, walking distance of a middle school, walking distance of downtown, fairly good freeway access. If Golden Gate Transit would ever reinstate a bus line through Larkspur, you would have access to the rest of the Bay Area through there. Why you would keep that a low density area, and that's almost the future, is being kept 21 units per acre. Maximum total, grand total of 28 units on that site. That's support. So, I would advise the planning commission to approve the housing element as written, because I think the longer this goes on, the worst of the thoughtful outcomes for the city are. However, if you are going to reopen it to modifications, that is a modification I would suggest.
Thank you very much.
Sent you a letter, I'll touch on a couple of points, not reiterating most of what I said previously. But the chair began the meeting by saying there were two objectives. One is to stick to the law and the other is to protect our city. And I greatly fear that this proposed plan does neither because it goes so far beyond what the law requires, and it does so in three ways. One way is by all of the extra units over and above what the state requires. The state requires currently 117 units, and I'm just reading from the plan. There are a number of, at least three different sets of units referred to in the various papers, but reading the plan itself, the site inventory provides a total capacity for 1,584 units. That is 767 more units than the state is requiring. A second way in which the plan goes far beyond what the state requires is in essentially requiring by right or no public input for most of those sites. The staff report says by right development is not required for most sites, i.e. not required by the state, but has been included to encourage development of housing, particularly on non-vacant sites, again, going beyond what the state requires. It goes on to say the rationale for that in the staff report is that even if we had discretionary review, this discretion would be limited by state law. Well, our objective standards are much weaker than the state requires. In fact, they are much weaker than the county model on which those standards were based. And additionally, those weak standards apply to every site, not only Larkspur Landing, but historic downtown. The state does not require that, and we should differentiate rationally between different sites. And if you read the spreadsheet that says, as part of your packet, that has the title, Summary of Changes to Housing Elements since December 2023 Planning Commission hearing, you will see over and over again the following statements in the last column. They say, okay, I will just say, they say no action required by state law, but voluntary Larkspur conditions to encourage housing development. We have our voluntary conditions have gone far beyond what the state requires.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, members of council and planning. My name is Richard Atwood, and I'm the owner of Site E at 1214 East of Francis Drake Boulevard. And I would like to suggest that density be increased for Larkspur Landing in general. Sites that are selected that are further from 101, and I think public transportation options. My site specifically is across the street from Smart, 80 feet from regular property. There's a lot of service, and I ride my bike every day for pretty much all. A lower parking requirement because I think you could live there without car demand for the other people. The other thing I'd like to ask is a market rate housing entitlement for Larkspur Landing properties, including mine. I'm trying to be positive about affordable housing being built, but it's so expensive to build anything nowadays. I think it's important that some market rate element be in there because it's probably a higher likelihood of being constructed in the next 8 years. I think I'm good. Thank you so much.
Are you requesting more units? Is that what you're
Yeah.
trying to grab the number?
Well, I don't have it. Market rate side, in Larkspur Landing will lead the,
Specifically asking for your side.
for my site, 60 units that are market, and then, the affordable unit could be covered now. For bonus.
I'm sorry, say that again.
50 units that are market rate, the affordable unit could cover that in all of the ADUs. And other bonuses. Not finished transportation. Well, I'm willing to absorb happily whatever they don't want in downtown Larkspur.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Randy is in Market, or, as I hear about, Magnolia and think about the current traffic jams that are, like clockwork, morning and evening and Doherty, and I think about the fact that, a new library is going to be constructed, which is going to bring a whole lot of additional traffic in an area that I think there's a lot of congestion right now, both on Magnolia, a combination of commuters, school-related traffic, and the confluence of Doherty and Magnolia and a new library, I think is going to present a lot of trouble as far as untenable traffic.
Thank you very much.
Eric Corney, company on the newly added site T, Magnolia, which is described as a kind of unknown characteristics about the construction. It should be noted that that's a historic railroad building with the Kentfield Railroad Station moved to that site, I believe, in the 50s. So that needs to be, that does have meeting historic reputation.
Thank you very much. Devin, would you care to say? Yeah, okay.
Hello. My name is Dana Vilas, and I have a question about Number site. I'm just curious, why that was designated as a site for housing. And also,
I'm requesting you to speak to the microphone.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Did you hear what I said?
I heard that you wanted to know why it's now.
Why it's designated. And also, I'm curious about how these different areas were designated to be low income, moderate, et cetera, et cetera. And I guess lastly, if indeed these proposals are approved, city council, how soon could developers begin? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Fred Ferragero, Larkspur. And I just wanted to echo the comments regarding sites at Lucky and Hamilton's. And parking. Parking will not be available. Traffic is horrible, as was articulated by Mr. O'Dwyer and several others. And thank you to the gentleman who mentioned the library that has been overlooked. Another significant development. Magnolia Street is it's not a transit corridor. It's a 2-lane road that moseys through Larkspur. It shouldn't be built on. These projects should be built along 101, as close to 101 as possible. If necessary, jack them up. Go 4 or 5 stories. That's where the housing should be concentrated. Or a little city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here who has, I know you two have already commented, and I will let you comment. I just want to know, is there anyone who's a first time commenting? Has any questions or comments? No. Yeah, then I will make these two the last two, and then I have a number of questions that we have a number of questions we need to answer.
My name is Nancy Reese and I live in Green Bay.
It's not, is it not?
I'm Nancy Reese, I live in Green Bay, and a lot of people have come up here to talk about Green Bay. And I'm particularly concerned about the development by the town of Pius. And it looks like a huge area compared to the other areas. And I guess it's hard for me to visualize where all these houses are gonna be. And I also want to comment the street that, it's a very narrow street and we have bikers there, very young kids riding on both sides of the street. And I can't imagine the havoc that will be caused by the construction that will be going on there and the lack.
Thank you.
I just want to reiterate that there's not two schools on Doherty, there's 3 plus one more at Temescal. So it's just that one road, it's always jam packed, and then there's only a 2-way road on Magnolia. Doherty going up to Magnolia, it's just 2 ways. So our little town wasn't built for all these, for high density. It's high density enough now. And any time throughout the years, the 40 plus years I've lived in Larkspur, anytime I wanted to build a house, they had to go through such stringent planning. It was amazing. And now you're opening up for these areas right in downtown. How many units now? And those, it's a lot. So if you could just please more Larkspur land these, we would really appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, thank you. I'm going to close the public portion and we're going to try and get through some answers to these questions. Yeah, I've been trying to write more down. You know what I want to start with, which is one of the questions that I had, and she's with. How has staff chosen the sites, with respect to like where the affordable housing?
So the last plan identified a similar number of sites. There's been some sites added, but most of the sites were proposed with higher densities and also proposed for uses of market rate affordable housing. With I don't know that there are any sites that were affordable housing. One of the comments that we received from the state was that our draft ordinance was adequate because we're designating certain sites for affordable housing. We also have to give them certain rights. For example, sites that were already designated in the housing element and not built during previous 2 cycles have to give special incentives for redevelopment. And one of the incentives is allowing 100% residential uses at the site. So the last housing hearing, there was a lot of concern about lots of commercial uses in the downtown. The allocation of affordable housing was changed to make the sites that were already listed in the housing element that hadn't been developed, which is like a lot of the downtown sites other than Tamarack Club. They were reallocated to just market rates so that we didn't have to do other special incentives, including allowing 100% housing downtown, or also there's requirements to allow at least 16 units on the site if they're designated for affordable housing, I believe. So anyway, there was the designation was changed to more market rate units in order to preserve the city's ability to regulate the projects. And so the sites that are accommodating the affordable housing shortfall, which are the ones that Larkspur landing, they do have a lot more restrictions pursuant to state law that were required to use the sites because they're accommodating affordable. And then the other sites, some of the moderate sites, second units we know are sometimes moderate and affordable just because of the rental rates, so that's why, for example, the condominium project that's for the second units was designated for moderate rate housing. And then like Mount Tam and the larger sites that Larkspur Landing were designated for affordable because those are the sites that the state will accept that affordable housing will be built at. If we said that affordable housing, for example, would be built at Lucky's, they would want us to show why, like where else in Larkspur has there been a project where affordable housing has been built on a site that small. And I wouldn't be able to show it because none of our projects have been built with affordable housing on sites that small. So that was part of the strategy, size of the sites. So keeping in mind that if we assign the site to be accommodating affordable housing, it comes with restrictions. Or
Okay, got it. Another general question, which I heard a lot tonight, was can we reduce the buffer? Because you have, I think we've got the requirement of 979 units.
So we're very close with the spreadsheet. We're very close to the affordable housing site, but there's room to eliminate sites in the market rate category from the housing element. Just the concern with eliminating sites is that if any of these other sites that are proposed for affordable housing come in and they don't do affordable housing, because we can't make them do affordable housing, then we have to make sure that there's enough adequate sites in the inventory where we can say affordable housing will be built. And we can arguably say that some of the sites would provide 20% affordables if that's what our inclusionary housing ordinance requires. But as we eliminate market rate sites, we're losing that 50% buffer too. So that it's going to mean that we're here talking about sites again as sites develop into develop housing. Like the gentleman said, there's not a big demand for affordable housing. So while it looks like we have a big buffer out of those larger sites and we're ready to develop, if they don't build affordable housing, we're going to be here trying to add on some sites. Yeah.
Just to follow up on that question, something Mr. Holmes said, what if we just define 979 units?
So the state wouldn't make the state, is unlikely to such a. They do want a 15% buffer. They've never made any comment about ours being inadequate. So there's a wiggle room there, but there's not. I mean, I've done hypotheticals. You take off one of those big sites and we're below right away. And so we need those other sites to make an argument that the overall list is still in compliance.
But if what we're trying to do is not, let's face it, we have traffic problems. It's gonna make a big impact. We add 79 units. And what you've said is that you don't think that will actually happen.
Right, it's, this plan just identifies sites that are available for construction of housing. There's no, other than we have a few of these site owners interested in development. Majority are not expressing any interest in redeveloping their sites. They're just available to be developed. They don't have to be developed. The city can't make them be developed. The owners may not develop them. So we will still have a buffer with the sites that don't develop. But my worry is the sites that are developing might be the Larkspur Landing site, the 700 to 1100 Larkspur Landing Circle site. And if those don't provide the affordable housing that we have in the plan, we're going to need to identify other sites if we don't have other sites to argue that 20% of the units will be affordable.
So this might be a question for Sky, but what happens if we reduce the buffer and we play it out and see what happens, see who comes in, who develops, who doesn't develop. Suddenly it's 8 years down the line, there's a new requirement. Can we just revisit and then add in more housing later if we're required to add in housing, but we haven't forced ourselves to put all that housing in right now?
I mean, it's true, you could have I would reduce the low income buffer, I would not, but the market rate buffer, you could reduce and see how projects play out and come back and add sites. We're always required to have the inventory, as sites develop, we're gonna have to look at them all the time to be sure we have enough inventory. It's just, no one wants, you heard, every single neighborhood where we're proposing housing, no one wants it, other than Larkspur Landing. But we also can't have a plan that puts all of our housing east of Sir Francis Drake and Sanibel School District. We need to incorporate housing everywhere in the city of Larkspur. So everyone's having a little bit of housing in this plan.
I'd add that, as I mentioned earlier, and at least as well, that the State Department of Housing and Community Development has essentially said they'll approve this housing element. If we remove sites, we're gonna go back to them and have to have further conversation about whether or not they will continue to approve it. So we're back into uncertainty about what the future of things look like and the expenditure of time to and other resources to engage in those conversations with HCD. If they will agree, I mean, there is a mid-plan review period that requires reporting to HCD, and if as part of that reporting, it did not appear that the city was making adequate progress, HCD would let us know, we'd have to add sites. But part of the issue, I think, at this stage is that we know HCD will approve this plan, but we don't know what would happen as soon as we start moving sites.
Okay, so I think you answered my question, which is, can we as the planning commission recommend approval of this plan subject to modifications, which would include reducing, let's say, a downtown site, market rate site, reducing numbers? Although I will say, I mean, I'm hearing different things from people who come out. Some people want more housing, some people want less housing, some people want more downtown, some people want more over at Larkspur Landing. So it's gonna be really hard to please everybody. So we're just trying to do what's right for the city the best we can.
Seeing all the sites that are outside of, Larkspur Landing sites don't allow housing, but they really definitely need the rezoning to be able to allow any housing. The other sites already allow what the state requires, they want the convenience. All of our sites today, we have that zoning, so we don't, like the higher density could be reduced on the numbers on each site. So if you want to reduce density on site, but a lot of them they're zoned for housing today, changing anything. The downtown and the downtown have been on housing for the last two housing. Nothing's good. So if they're on this time, obviously would be the one more likely that some of these sites will reach out. But it's the same case today, like they have 20 this day and urban housing over today.
Once interest rates come down, I mean, people getting that funding, build in the future, but I just want to make sure that we don't approve something that we regret. So that's what I'm going to do here. Okay, so that's maybe something we should consider, is if there's anything that we want to change, it's subject to approving it maybe, but
Got some kind of on that note. I was wondering if you could elaborate, either Sky or Elise, or maybe Alex, about a little bit more about why we have units downtown. I mean, I know in the last meeting, we heard a lot of public comments about how downtown was not the preferable place for housing development. And if I recall correctly, there were some issues that the state had with, spreading the housing out over multiple areas of the city and not, especially affordable housing, and not sort of confining it to one area, so sort of stay out of Larkspur Landing. So I was hoping that we could get some more clarity.
The city has a duty to affirmatively further fair housing, and part of that is looking at the demographics of the community and the different census tracts and their demographics are detailed in the housing element, and we have to put numbers in about how many units are proposed in each of these tracts to demonstrate that we aren't just concentrating, for example, affordable units where there's large areas of minorities. There's just not a lot of minorities in Larkspur in general, so that's not too big of an issue, but we also don't want to create a pattern that creates areas that become segregated in the future. So for example, affordable housing at Larkspur Landing, it's potential that we're just planning a community that is not going to be integrated in the future. So, so there was an intent to put housing throughout the communities to avoid that issue. But then some of the sites downtown, can comment on, because they're already allowed for housing, so we're not, if the community wanted to eliminate housing downtown, you actually have to change the zoning to take away the right to build housing, if that's what you want. So it's not just adding the inventory here, but also showing that when you take away the right to build housing on all the sites that are already zoned for housing, that you'll still be able to meet the numbers.
Okay, so essentially, we need to spread it out over the entire city. We can't concentrate it in a single area. I'm understanding that correctly.
Right,
Because the state-
I don't know that the state would approve it being concentrated in a single area.
Right, okay. Thank you.
I have a logistical question. We have a lot of comments and questions tonight, so for us to work our way through this, it's gonna probably take at least 90 minutes and maybe now, an hour and a half, 2 hours. It's gonna be a long evening. I think we might lose some members of the planning commission, so I'm not quite sure how we're going to proceed on this. So we still have a quorum if we're down to 3, right? Yes. Okay, and I'm guessing everybody wants their questions answered, right? That's why we're here tonight, and that's why it's going, so we're gonna try and get through this best we can, as quick as we can. All right, and we'll just keep going through. So there were several comments on 501 meters. And what's gonna be, how do we know parking there is not gonna be an issue?
So we don't know if the project owner will ever come in with a project, so it's hard to predict what they will come in with. There's been a condition included in the draft ordinance, and I can read it. So currently, the draft ordinance has a condition for that particular site that says the applicant shall provide a parking demand analysis for the current and proposed uses, including actual resident, employee, and non-employee caregiver parking demands, existing parking availability, and ITE parking standards. If parking at the site is considered inadequate, the report shall provide parking management strategies such as workforce housing, transit passes, shuttles, and unbundled parking. If current parking is inadequate, parking for current residents, employees, and caregivers shall not be reduced unless recommended parking management strategies are implemented, funded, and recorded as a deed restriction on the site prior to issuance of a building permit. So it's just trying to implement an objective standard, so if a project came in at that site, there's some way they're gonna have it.
And it's same property, but they would have to go through it. That's the commission, flooding and drainage.
Typically, a building would have to have a drainage. But there's nothing specific for drainage or if it's great.
And then, just so I'm clear, what would be the margin requirement for a unit project per unit?
So for most of the housing types, no parking would be required to state law.
I was wondering.
The local standards do require parking, but just to be realistic, there's a lot of waivers that they'd be entitled to.
Having trouble hearing up here because everyone's chatting.
So I just want to be realistic about it, is that a lot of the sites could request no parking. However, a lot of developers want to provide parking. The site that's being proposed to 1,000 North Landing, there's the garage, would you get it, 2 spaces per unit, against parking there. And some of the developers just have permanent parking, but the residents.
If they don't provide parking, parking goes out. So, you know, that's the problem with North Magnolia, is there's no guest parking on that project. So it's gotta go somewhere, you would think good planning would require parking, no matter what they're trying to do.
The objective standards you have, it just have to consider that a lot of the state laws would allow us to be rated big by a certain percentage of the work will have.
Somebody had a question on sewer capacity and
So the sewer, just like the water, they've indicated that there's adequate capacity to serve the workforce housing sites.
I think we've addressed the parking issue, right, so that not all the sites would get.
Is it, maybe one of the questions to follow too is about traffic analysis within the sites. The state law no longer requires traffic impacts to be considered an environmental impact. And they're looking at traffic in terms of vehicle miles traveled. And so a lot of these sites, they're proposed walking distance to like people fed, school, stores, and in general, replacement of commercial uses with housing usually reduces traffic to me. So, number one, like there's just not gonna be a traffic study for the project. But second, a lot of the state laws, which exempts them from, because they're gonna have low, they're not gonna raise the average vehicle miles traveled in the community. Their housing projects.
So can we, as a planning commission, specifically request the traffic study on any individual site, such as the ones on page?
I don't know what consequence, but it would be, you have to put some sort of objective standard that if you request a traffic study and if it says X, then this happens. It has to be somehow into some objective standard.
So is the expectation of Drake's Landing has a lot of parking, or is the expectation that the units there would probably be walking distance from stores and?
So especially during planning, because that's within a half mile of the transit stops, there's no parking required.
The expectation is there'll be less cars then, less parking requirement. I guess that's the same, but let's see.
Unless the developer wants to provide.
Right, okay, and I suspect that'll be some of the downtown. The goal would be to have.
There's parking downtown, but there's still parking requirement or objective standards that developers can provide more parking.
Got it. I have a question about some of the finance also.
Sure, I'm gonna elaborate on this a little bit. The Housing Accountability Act, provisions related to housing elements, do provide for, a city to self-certify that its housing element is compliant with all of the requirements of state law. So the question was, well, what does the law say? The statute does say that, but like many legal issues, there are ambiguities in it and people have interpreted the statute in different ways. This is an issue that continues to be worked out in the courts. The State Department of Housing and Community Development, has essentially taken the position that a housing element that they have not certified is not compliant with state law. And so in any proceeding in front of the court, it is going to be a factor that if HCD has not issued certification, it will be evidence in support of a determination that a particular housing element is not compliant. There isn't a straightforward answer, I'm sorry to say.
Okay, I also, no question. No?
No.
Sorry, that seems to be all we can provide with you. Okay.
I'll try one more statement on it, which is that the city council could ultimately say, could come up with a completely different housing element and say, we are certifying that this housing element is completely compliant with all aspects of state law. As soon as the developer concluded that their project had been denied in violation of the Housing Accountability Act, and wanted to litigate that, they would go directly to arguing that the housing element was not compliant with state law, and the fact that HCD had not certified it would be evidence in support of their case that would affect the outcome of that case.
Thank you. I want to move on to some of the big questions. Let's go back to so it's just to explain, we had in the condition, the development could take place by right if it was a grocery store. It sounds like Albertsons is not wanting to, I'm correct me if I'm wrong, they have asked that there would be an increased number of units, up to 45 units, and no requirement to put in a grocery store.
To answer another question, I guess that we got, there was a letter that was sent from Albertsons to the planning department, I believe today, this afternoon at some point, and so it was uploaded to the public portal, but it was sent this afternoon, uploaded this afternoon, and therefore didn't make it into our printed binders or anything, and may have been missed by folks that weren't, actively refreshing their browser this afternoon. So that's the late mail that we received.
We got it right before this meeting, so it was very late, new information for us. The question is, what do we do?
I mean, I think at the December meeting, or the rest of the series, the developer, he developed a lot of briefs for the San Francisco Giants, and he gave a very eloquent statement, which basically just said the developer can do what they want to do, pretty much. If you can't require them to put a grocery store in it, it doesn't, it's allowed financially. Included as a request, but whether they'll do it as completely off, it's based on economics. To me, this whole thing, I mean, I think a couple of things that I've noticed from some of the comments is that there's a perception somehow that Larkspur is the developer. We are not the developers. We do not know what something's going to look like. We have no idea what's going to be built there, who's going to build it, whether or not it'll ever get built, as one of the members said to me. I think the dilemma that we're facing is either we approve something, the devil you know, versus the devil you don't know. And the devil you don't know is having them to be, if we don't pass the housing plan, to come in and do pretty much whatever they want in any way that they want. Completely without community support or community input. And we have community input here, and I think it's great that everybody showed up, but this is what we're facing. We're not the developers. We don't know what's going to get built. We don't know how many are going to get built. We just know that we have to do this. And if we don't do this, they can do whatever they want. That's pretty much what the issue is. And so it's frustrating, I have to say. I mean, I'm frustrated as a citizen of Larkspur, just like you are.
Right, so is there anyone here from, is the lady here from Albertsons? Yes, is she still here? Yeah. I had a question for you. So what exactly do you want to do outside? Yes, please. I'm asking you because it's like the #1 question we get from members of the public.
I could bring a copy of the letter if you want me to read it, but it's like 8 minutes.
It's very long. Yeah, so maybe tomorrow.
Our tenant vacated, we've been working with developers, and we have a significant amount of interest from housing developers. And they're seasoned, they have done developments from Seattle down to San Diego. And they're ready to go, so we're negotiating on that. Two different developers, they got narrowed down as a result of the density decrease. And so we have 2 developers that are interested, we're negotiating. The actually they're the ones that notified that the density is decreased. So we'd like to go ahead and bring in beautiful housing development. So
what does that mean? That you would sell it to the developers? You no longer be Albertsons own?
yes, correct.
So do you have any intention of putting a grocery store back in?
We have evaluated it and it doesn't pencil for us, you know, there's a reason that Lucky vacated. And honestly, the way, it's just me, but the way you get a grocery store downtown is to provide housing. So if you have some of these projects, then maybe at some point it would be justified, but just not, it doesn't pencil.
So again, to answer more questions that we received, is there a scenario where you would put the grocery store in? Where you would keep the property, not sell it, either you build or not build housing?
We're not a housing developer, and housing developers aren't generally grocery store developers. And so what we've got now are housing developers that are interested in building, whether it can be mixed use on the ground floor with some small amount of retail, you know, that might be a possibility, but a grocery store is unlikely.
Thank you very much.
Just one thing, if people remember back in Larkspur history, where Mountain Racket Club is, that was a grocery store. It was a big grocery store, it was huge. As I said, my friend John basically said, look, we've got Woodlands, we've got, you know, not Lucky's anymore. You say it was. Okay, but he said it doesn't make any sense to build grocery stores, even though it'd be convenient for us. The ice deli in downtown Larkspur that's most, which we used to have, but we don't have that anymore either. So there's a reason, because it doesn't make sense.
Downtown, developing a good store. Has apartments on the top, but groceries.
We would love that. We would love that. We would love the grocery store with the apartments on the top. That's good. Yeah, yeah.
Top is on an apartment.
That's great, so
Would you-
find development,
Yeah,
find development.
you can do it, you can make it happen. If you put the names right behind you. Reading the funding. Operation. I would love that too.
I think the development that's on the highway in 1-1 is a really great little store. I mean, it's on them, we apply money. You know?
So just a standpoint, if with this new information. Does that change anything now with the whistle for density for that?
My question here is the same.
Yeah, because now we no longer have a ground floor grocery store. I guess, I don't know if that changes parking requirements, I don't know if that changes. I mean, what would be the impact if that was more housing? Is that a affordable housing or a market rate?
They were to apartment, they were just apartment.
That was what you can send them actually. It's all market.
Yes, for market rate. 28 market rate units. Could we go up to 41? Is there?
Well,
Yeah, I don't think the state would have a problem if you increase in the density.
But then can we take it away from somewhere else? Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of issues and complaints with other sites that everyone's shaking. Yeah.
There, if you're looking at any of the sites that are in Vermont, above market, lists for like lower numbers of sites, so any of those sites could be removed without a significant impact. Let's say that. So, and but if that's what we have to say, could be a little bit the market rate designation without too big of a. If you take them all, would start getting difficult with something that's developed, but if there's smaller sites that don't. Like.
But it strikes me that the Lucky site is in a really desirable state for living, for building. So I don't. I would like to propose to increase the numbers on that.
Yeah, I mean, I we got a lot of comments that people would love a grocery store, I think we all would love a grocery store, but we're seeing now that if we require there to be a grocery store, we will have a vacant grocery store at that site for a long time, so I think it makes sense to, if we're not getting a grocery store, then we should put housing there. Downtown walking to schools.
I mean, I think that's the case with the caveat that, Natasha says, well, why not more? I mean, 200. And obviously, you're gonna deal tight, so you don't want to story. So there's probably a happy medium. Yeah. They're actually, this is the thing about the house, the development. I mean, if they can develop whatever they want, they can do whatever pretty much they want. Right now, I think the height limit for Larkspur is, what's the maximum height?
The objective design and development standards for that area, it depends on if somebody's doing ground floor commercial. But if it's without ground floor commercial, it's 3 to 4 stories, the 4 stories in the phone. And then it's 4 to 5 if you're for commercial, which would be more ground level commercial, that's any more volume on that. Can do, that may be more than increase.
I don't know if everybody's here for the North Magnolia project that was developed for, at the very top of North Magnolia Works Kent Field. That was a very contentious issue. The developer was 5-story building there. Hasn't been noticed. So I think that's where, again, we get to the point where, are we gonna put a housing element or are we gonna have it forced? And that's where I think we're at.
I just want to make a note here that the December 2023 hearing that you had, with the higher density, that's like the unit total was 86 units. Actually, if we have, less technical difficulties, I can give you the breakdown.
For the opposite.
For the lucky site, yes. Yeah.
At what height proposed? I mean, was there a height limit set on that or just?
Based on what
Right now, so it's, I mean, I don't know what we're really looking for, I don't know what we do, I mean, can we improve the housing elements tonight, knowing that we will increase the number from 21 to 29 number?
I think you could recommend a council approval of how now with the recommendation a look at increasing the number of units on site and the incentive to provide the property, and then staff will have time between now and see here to develop more analysis of that.
Can we also do new wheels?
Yes.
We figured out this so that we remember it when we make it. Thank you.
Okay. Because,
It's not most people, you don't have to make a decision, right? You can, but
Well, if we don't make a decision, then it's gonna get made for us.
not.
Yes, whether you like it or not, it will get made for us. They'll have to have it too. They're in the same boat we are.
They've done nothing.
And they're gonna have to force them as well.
Maybe we should just delay it for the next council meeting.
Well, for the planning commission, we make recommendations to the city council. It goes to the city council.
and make a comment there too, and they can decline any recommendation.
Yeah, I think.
Let me disagree with Harlan.
Several sessions, but I have neighbors who have what's going on. Not, and I don't think it's because they're not in. Aren't any. From the city.
Well, we're trying to address all the comments that were raised here tonight, but. And somebody asked, why was 512 really released? The staff maybe.
The city parking, I think that was a response to feedback.
Okay, so we could feedback from the public.
Like, you didn't have that green, right, you never, or the idiot. Friday, not the number.
Self-address who gets, or explain to us who gets notices and how the notices are distributed.
So in this case, it was a 300-foot boundary, or a 300 feet from any of these Google sites, so those new sites were added. That's why they were getting those versus.
But if they were having.
It wasn't the end of the December here, these were found between, so that's what you came. It was all published in the newspaper.
Yeah, and you know, we are moving, this, so I will say, it's up to you here today, there's been a housing committee. Committee that's been going on for about 2 years, that was always open to the public. Not many people would attend that, because people weren't really interested in coming to that, and there's been notices since then, there's been public hearings on that, and we've had a really big turnout. I know some of you have only heard about this recently.
We're not in Larkspur, but we still are really
Right. Right, and I think the reason for that is because this was the first time this site became part of this project. Now, you also had a question about shadowing. I believe you were concerned that if something was constructed on JK, there would be a shadow from construction. So maybe staff could address what the rules are around shadowing and if that would.
So if the sites are put into the housing element for by right construction, they would be required to meet the objective design standards, which allow for at least till 3 to 4 story buildings in that area of the city of Larkspur. There's no requirement that they consider shade impacts on other sites. And then, as we saw with Magnolia Village project, if someone can't do the density that was allowed, they could ask for waivers of the development standards and go taller if they want to. So there's no objective standard that deals with shade, but there's height limit in our objective standards.
There is a height limit in our objective standards.
Right.
But they're not enforced, is what we're hearing, that they can't know.
It's potential they could have to waive the height limit like they did for
So
Magnolia.
it's not that they're not enforced, they are enforced if they, as they imply, however, there's an exception. And this is where it gets really confusing, and even I find it hard to follow, I'm trained as an attorney, and even I find this hard. There's an exception where if they,
Someone provides affordable housing as part of their project and request consideration under the state density bonus law, they're allowed to ask for waivers of our development standards.
And
that's exactly what happened in the area. So if they do not housing and they stick with it, then
They have to comply with their.
fine with. If they come in and they say, we're going to put affordable housing, then they can ask for certain rates, sessions. Basically, they break some of the rules, not fine. And we had our hands tied recently, the project at Northern, where they came in, basically railroaded us, the building, but as the gentleman said earlier, they still haven't built it yet, because it's not there, and it's still an empty site.
And to be clear, the waivers and concessions are to break or to go beyond what Larkspur allows, but those waivers and concessions are provided by state law that we, correct me if I'm wrong, again, this guy, that we don't have control over, right? We cannot, we have to follow those.
So those two sites are two of the ones that don't provide a lot of housing for the housing element. If they were eliminated, it would, if unless you want to the two vacant office buildings, if you want to encourage them to be redeveloped for housing, that would be a reason to keep them in with the incentives to develop housing. But if they were removed from the plan, it's, the housing element will be fine.
How long have they been vacant for?
Since pre-COVID,
Pretty long time.
yeah.
Also, if they weren't part of the housing plan, they could still develop it. They can develop it.
Correct.
They're just not part of our plan.
And they don't get
They're part of the
extra
company.
units, but they could still ask for density bonuses, so they're still entitled to build housing if they wanted to, or could make it as well.
So just, I see you shaking your head, I mean, one of the schools of thought is, which is better, having housing in a vibrant community or having empty buildings that get graffiti and somebody has to maintain that. And that's what's happened up in North Magnolia, just a lot of the blocks are really empty. We get a lot of complaints as a city that it's an eyesore. So I'm not saying there's a right answer, I'm just saying there's two schools of thought.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm a first time attending, lived in New Parks for 30 years. Outside our backyard is Magnolia. So, and are you saying that the old Corvettes, they're still gonna build 4 or 5 million?
So they received entitlements to do it, so.
They have approvals.
They have a full entitlement to do it, but if the developer was, planning on doing it, they could get the financing.
So they have a building permit application, so
They do.
they might be pursuing it.
But, yeah, time is of the essence.
Well, I just want to say, my backyard on the other end is 980 Magnolia. You know, those little shops there,
Yeah.
learning center, et cetera. For 30 years, my worry was, I wonder if they'd ever build something bigger, right? Overshadow, look right in your yard. Now you're talking about building there, across from Masonic, where the rustic and so forth, right? QRFP. Little area, and it says, according to this, first zone 39 units, rezone 49, 36 and 49. You put almost 50 units in that little stretch. And it's already, as others have said, probably backed up at certain times of the day, things on air. Come back.
Yes, this is the issue. We are not dealing with this.
So I didn't do
And the risk we're taking is that we don't agree to something that we've been well thought out the last 4 years.
Yeah.
A developer could come in and say, you know what, I'm gonna build at North Magnolia, I'm gonna build what I want, that I think will sell, and it can be, and we can't do anything at that point. So it's if somebody made a comment, W no, W don't, so which is better? Oh, right, do I want all this development to happen? No.
Don't you have, just the city have zoning, power? What you think?
That is saying, and if we don't develop housing plan, we have double less.
Problem is, everything in California is really expensive. Living here is now really expensive, housing is really expensive. So the state is forcing what they believe are the remedies to try and make things cheap by providing more housing. The all supply of housing, in theory, it gets cheap, so it's been kind of forced on us as a solution for everything being providing more housing, more affordable housing. That's sort of the scenario we are. I think the previous city council member who in the last meeting passed away and has sadly, but if you feel strongly about this, you should go vote. You should go vote for your Sacramento Assemblyman, vote for this general election coming on, vote if you really believe in making a change or disagree with what's happening. Make sure you register and make sure you vote. Because that's really the only way we're going to stop this. And I don't get okay, I'm going to continue with the questions. Somebody asked why talked about parking. We talked about changing the housing element. We are making some recommendations to city council to change that. Readapting offices, I had a comment about readapting offices. That's going to be up to the developer, how they do it. it probably makes more sense to take an existing building, but in some cases it may not happen. I mean, we don't really have much control other than when they put in the application. And they both comply with the rules in place. Somebody asked, why are we reducing downtown housing and moving it to the edge of the city? Well, that I believe was in response to feedback we got from the public. They wanted housing moved away from the downtown area and moved further out away from downtown. Right? No,
It should be confusing for,
you don't agree with that?
for a proposed housing element to be. What we have existing zoning, making it smaller.
Right, so everyone has a different opinion on that, so, oh, can we put more density into Ross Valley was another question.
So we're
Increase the density at Ross Valley, the cemetery.
Develop site.
So you could increase density at that site, they just are unlikely to build more. They're looking, a lot of the developers right now find that the projects with lower density, really expensive units are what pencils out. So you, even if you increased it to 50 units an acre, 45 or more, they may come in with a project at 25 because that's what pencils out for them.
Can we satisfy the housing element requirement by, for example, removing J and K and adding more units at the boundary district?
So I don't think, if you were to take out J and K, I don't, that would give me to replace those units, they could just come out.
But to be clear, they could still develop as a residential because that's the current zoning.
But they have to do a mixed use unless they put in a, yeah, they put their zone for they could put residential and office use.
Or we could just reduce the number that we wanted to.
What's allow what's in the current zoning is 21 units an acre. There's other provisions in the ordinance that facilitate housing development at those sites, such as allowing 100% housing and fire. So if you were, depending on where you, what you want to see at the sites, you might want to take them out and take them out of the ordinance as well.
And then, I'm gonna go fast now because we're running out of time. So Q and T, put in the minus and that's, the next big, they are, so, I heard tonight their historical significance.
And it's not.
Then, so that would be.
Alex can comment on the T balloon lights, either you couldn't, we're not giving them, the one benefit that you could just put it in for lot 7 and not lot 8 to keep the historic structure separate. We do have conditions in place that require preservation of historic buildings, and the development must comply with Secretary of Interior standards of treatment of historic property. So there's some preservation rules in place to protect that structure. So if it's in, there is some preservation techniques that are in place. If you want to just include lot 7, it's almost kind of, the only reason to have it in the plan would be to allow 100% density, since right now it's in a commercial district that would require around 4. So if you wanted to keep it in, just allow the balloon lights, half of the site to be in, the incentive there will be that someone can come in with just a housing project, wouldn't have to be commercial as well as housing. Which could be a good, it might be a nice place to have. So you know, it's another one that's, if you took it out, it's not gonna affect.
And then, right. How can we build, I guess, we could, I mean, we would make the recommendation tonight, it still has to go to city council, but at any time a development is coming with an application. That's the question. Something get built, but anytime they have to get funding, so it's not relevant.
I think not relevant, but it is, because if the longer this is not, the longer we don't have an approved housing element, if I understand correctly, the more time that a developer, a potential developer could submit something under the building remedy and something that nobody likes.
But a builder could come in at any time to submit an application.
Right, correct. right now, under the building permit, after this, under.
That's true. Okay.
Oh, do you want to put it down?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and I was saying the evacuation plan in the event of flood, I think we, yeah, we contact Public Works, they could provide that information. All right, we wanna. Oh, no, and then, the last one is Project M, Mount Town Rapid Club. How high and what is the intention of the owner? Unless the owner is here tonight, I don't know what he's planning to do, he or she. And how high he's gonna build anything, I don't know, because this tennis club, I should say tennis there.
If you want, I can just jump in really quickly and say that it's under, in the odds, it's under the same designation as these. 3 or 4 stories, 4 or 5.
Right, oh, we should cover it, that's taken out, right, do you want to just cover how we changed it, it's no longer the.
Well, the change of Mount Panoramical was reduced density, and the last one was proposed at 45.
And now
That's 21, which is what it is.
right, so the existing zoning allows it. The owner has not put any units in it, they still run it as a.
I'm the one who had questions on, did he approach you? Did you approach him? Or
They don't even know who it is. I just know there's been a new owner. I just know that somebody bought it recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone bought it recently.
Yeah, I don't even know if he plans on keeping it as a record.
You don't,
The possibility of it.
you don't know anything about it.
No, yeah.
Okay, I think we've addressed every question that was raised tonight. I've done my best to do that. So, shall we, I guess we need to make a motion and we need to see it. And I think things that came up were the other stuff. Requesting an increase, in the density. New wheel side. And this is having staff to consider that and make it, send it to city council. Are we taking anything out? Are we gonna take J, K, or any of the small sites? The lights,
I don't see any reason to take anything out.
Okay.
I agree. I just, it's there.
But we weren't notified, it directly impacts us.
Right, again, it's not something that's gonna get built. It is not, it is just gonna be part of the housing element. So there are sites that can't be built by anybody at any time.
But it's still inequitable that our numbers, the existing numbers are going up with existing allowable to now will be more, whereas things like the Tamra, like those plans for having there. Right now, you could have 79 units and then you're proposing it goes down to 50, so it seems like these other ones are going to.
No, we're proposing that they increase the density at the development, yeah.
Back to units allowed under existing zoning.
Yeah, this isn't something that says that, go ahead, I mean, we're just basically including it in the housing element. It is not it is not a license to do anything.
That you didn't get the notice.
Yeah, you understand that it doesn't matter that you, I mean, I understand that it matters to you. I get it, and we've been doing this for 4 years. This thing was put off since December, so I don't know what to tell you.
Really appreciate that, because we didn't get enough notice to actually be in a meeting for our adults.
Well, this is the first time we've discussed this.
Yeah.
This like wasn't, you actually haven't missed anything.
It sounds like it's very clear, and so it's basically all I can find was sitting back.
I hear you, you're saying that you didn't have a chance to come back and give us some changes. That's what I'm asking.
We did.
No,
I hear you.
Yeah, we're the only ones that showed up, so everyone else that was right, they have no clue about. They didn't get it. They have no clue. I asked my neighbor who's right of me if they were coming tonight, and they said, for what? And I showed them a picture of the rendering of a 5-story building in Robert Street.
It just, again, a developer could come in and put a 5-story building.
I feel like you didn't get the notice in enough time to be heard. It seems like it can be easily taken off.
This will also be heard at the city council.
Yeah, but they're gonna go with your recommendation.
Yeah, you do
That's fine, it's like at least go. What is your actual concern here? That you want the empty building, or what, tell me what you're concerned about?
Is that if this gets identified in a housing plan, then yeah, developers are more likely to see that, okay, I have the green light here. It's more likely that something pops up. If something's 4 stories, which is allowable right now, pops up, I wouldn't see any daylight. All the, my facing yard where I'm starting with all the shaded for the majority of the day. That is the window. Again, is the winter front.
If you're concerned about the height,
Yes.
more than anything else, if something at some point in the future gets built, it might be. That's your concern.
Yes. Don't stay in place and you know, the traffic, you already get a lot of folks just sitting there. And that's all coming out when they're kind of asthma, and they just like to do the queue, you know, highway in our neighborhood.
Well, hopefully if they take away commercial and put in residential, it's likely that the traffic will get reduced. So you probably want residential instead of commercial, because in general it's less. Well, they're empty, that's why they're no use. But the risk you're taking about never having that developed is that you could just, at some point, somebody writes in a lease that there's something that you don't want in there. As an empty building. Yes, you be careful what you're asking for here, because I feel like
you know, one there for housing, but. So that even somebody.
but your traffic concern might be resolved with a housing balance. I just want you to think about it. I'm not trying to, I just want you to think about what you're asking for. I'm really trying to listen to you here, and I'm really trying to take on your concern. You have a lot of questions. I'm really trying to answer all of the questions. The point though, everyone will notice is the height. You're concerned that someone in the future comes in and build a building that's very tall, that will block your view. It will shade. Okay. So right now the objective sound in that site is always a 4 stories.
If we do not make it correct, if we.
No, if it's part of that, if it's part of the housing element, it would be have to comply with objective standards, right? And so what is the height of that building? This is it.
Just right across the road, so before the buildings don't have that.
I mean, this is a concern everyone has when they have a development that's built next to them. It's unfortunately part of the, I just had the same issue where I live, you know, people build something and it adds.
Appreciate that, but we didn't do last week, and it seems like tonight was already like here and you know, and they were like, it won't possible for getting this group if these two are staying outside early.
But I don't want you to walk away. So let's say they are taken out. I don't want you to walk away thinking, no, someone can come in tomorrow.
Currently zoned, I understand.
And if they could still build a 4-story building, they will block or shadow. And if they put in the affordable housing, right now. So we actually have more control if they don't. We actually can require, we put in certain height requirements. If they put in, if we don't keep it in the housing element, they come in affordable housing, they could then ask for concessions and waivers and make it even taller. Then we could apply it because it has an element.
It's in a.
So I'm just saying. But don't put yourself in the worst position.
It's in the suburban Main Street zone, which allows 2.5 to 3 stories.
Yeah.
So it's the same as what's now allowed for North Magnolia. It's the more residential character, not solid buildings.
Don't need to say 2.5 to 3 stories, not 4 stories. But if they put in an affordable housing, they could ask for concession and waivers, and maybe like, no, it was just stories, so I was negotiating, I would keep it in there. I don't know, I think you're working against your interests in.
Because I felt like there was a lot of fear mongering, like you have to, or like everything works. And I still wanted to get passed, but so you're telling me it's capped that no one's still reviewing it. Like even if they're outside.
I think we're looking at you at this site, the 2 sites, J and K. And so if they are, like, you have 2 options, we can put them in the house, or we can not.
Well, no, actually, we could reduce the density, right? Maybe that's what we do, just reduce the density. I know it doesn't. She'll see it.
You get it, but again, I don't think it makes any difference.
It's not.
Yeah, I guess I wish that, you could have been involved in the previous, the planning that went into, I guess, this document. And I agree that that's unfortunate. It seems like, I mean, I think leaving it in, I think that is for Larkspur, the city, I think that's a good site for housing. And I think that the consequences of leaving it in versus taking it out are, you know, there's still potential for there to be a development there either way, correct? So it seems like as a city, that's, in my opinion, that's the route we should take.
So I've heard my commissioners are okay here, so thank you. Then we need to make a motion.
Okay. I move we approve, it's resolution 2024-001.
Subject to.
04002.
002.
Yeah. I think you will be on.
I know I'm not supposed to make motions, but I'm telling that it will say, subject to the staff consideration of increasing, I guess it's making a recommendation to City Council that staff will look into increasing
The site.
increase the density and the risk still requirement. At Lucky's,
Density at.
you will increase the density, you will. That's all right. All right.
Okay.
I think we've got it.
So did we just increase Lucky Store, back up to 35?
We just made the recommendation to the city council that they will increase the density.
Well,
25, 35.
there's no number yet. We're gonna ask staff to consider what's appropriate. I just don't know what the right answer is tonight. And if she had to develop that, then hopefully they will have a conversation with the city and they can figure out. Cheaper.
Do you want to take a roll call vote?
Did somebody second it?
I second it. Oh. Okay. Yeah, we just blocked something. Who seconded? Yes. I second it.
Okay, can we have a roll call,
Okay.
please?
Yes, Commissioner, yes, Commissioner Fisher,
Yes.
Commissioner Whiteside,
Yes.
and Chair Chalmers.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. One member recused.
Yes. Okay,
I make a motion.
do we have any public comments on matters not on the agenda? Seeing none, can we move on? Can we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to return. Second.
We all say. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Staying.